to the Appalachian Podcast. I'm your host, Billy Riddle. With me, as always, is my co-host, or back with me, actually. He wasn't here last time. Jeff Taylor, Bodine. Welcome back from your Caribbean vacation.
Yes, we had a fantastic week, but I didn't get sunburned, but I didn't drink enough, but I eat too much. So I need to correct that next time. So,
well, I can't even pretend like I know what goes on a cruise. I've never been on one. Maybe one of these days in 10 years when both of my kids aren't driving us absolutely insane, we can put up with something like that. But today's show is also
special.
The Deez Lug Nutz podcast. Swapcast, crossover, whatever you want to call it. So
this is the first edition.
Yes. So
first edition.
This is essentially a Swapcast. So we're going to go ahead and introduce the hosts of the Deez Lug Nutz podcast, which is myself, Bodine, the Crumb Snatcher, Dean Motley, who you all recognize from many of our shows. You've slacked off here lately on the Appalachian Podcast side of things, but
well, you know how that goes.
Surgery.
Things happen. Things happen.
Life's happened there, yeah.
And the fourth nut is going to be Julian Austin. Julian?
Hey, what's going on there? It's great to be here once again. This is starting to become a thing. Really looking forward to how this is going to play out because we're all nuts about racing.
So with having said that, we're coming to you with a little something. It's not different from what we normally do, but we're trying to separate it a little bit because we've had so much going on with the Appalachian Podcast, and it's got its own identity. We've got this racing deal that's kind of took over, and by branching off into a racing-only podcast, we're able to diversify and actually spread our wings a little bit there. So
we don't want to get confused either. We're still going to have a lot of racing people on the long forum discussion on the Appalachian Podcast. That's still one of my favorite is the racing ones because I want to be able to sit down and talk with Satch Worley for an hour, or Gerald Compton, or Jimmy Hensley, and hear some of the stories that are being saved and treasured right here, throughout the walls of the internet. So we still will do that, but this podcast will give us the ability to talk about racing once a week, which the numbers don't lie. That moves the needle the most. A lot of people tune into the Appalachian Podcast. So this way we can kind of talk a little racing every week, and maybe bring on a different guest for 15 or 20 minutes for a segment. Somebody call in,
and we're gonna have some good guests on this deal.
Oh, we've already reached out to a ton of great people.
These short little 15-20 minute segments. I'm telling you, we can grab some names.
And we have already, Julian's been doing a lot of groundwork for that over the past. We've been working at this for the past couple months. Dean, Julian, they've been doing a lot of work going to the tracks where we can't go and making some contacts. So the Deez Lug Nutz podcast, they're going to kind of intertwine, and hopefully, some of the people that we get connected with through the Deez Lug Nutz podcast will become, more permanent connections. Maybe they can come on the Appalachian Podcast. Maybe they're interested enough to where we can sit down for an hour and a half and maybe get them up here to Franklin County at some point in time because, that's what we really want to do. We love people coming in the studio. We love meeting new people and reaching out and getting them boys up here and showing them what a good time we've got going on in Franklin County.
Well, I think it's pretty cool. And already we've been able to establish a second podcast, I guess you could say. I mean, the Appalachian numbers have really done well over the past year or so, and I think that's great. I mean, the need for content is out there, and I think this particular show whets the appetite for the long-range discussions that you have because
that's a fantastic way of putting it.
Yeah,
that's why Julian's on this show. That was
I said it all along.
That's
So, if anybody knows anything about appetite, it's me, all right? Let's just put that out there.
So, rolling all along here, what we want to talk about today, we might as well. Do we want to get into it or what?
I won't.
Do you have another point? Okay.
Well, I thought we were going to figure out why we were all here.
That's what I was getting to.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the main thing is why we're here, the panel, where we get into racing. And Julian brought this up as a great topic. So, let's lead off with you, Julian. Why are you interested in racing?
Here?
I'm here because my mom and dad. No, never mind. No, racing has just, as long as I can remember, it's always been a very important thing in my life. From the first time I can remember going to my daddy's garage and seeing his Bill Elliott collection and his Dale Earnhardt collection. My dad worked for Duncan Ford. For you folks in Franklin County or historians.
I thought we'd be Ramsey Ford.
Ford, Franklin Ford. he was part of the service department, and often they would have Bill Elliott stop by.
I've got pictures.
I got a big picture in my room next to that Coors number 9, and that just really opened up the floodgates for me because I just thought it was so cool, like the sounds and, the action and the drama of things. I mean, I remember my first race that I ever went to that I can remember was Martinsville in 1991. And you all know Harry Gant was in the midst of his long win streak. He was going for number 4 in a row at Martinsville. Was
Martinsville the fourth? Was Martinsville the fourth?
Yeah, Martinsville was the 4th.
I thought it was the 3rd.
No, it was the 4th because North Wilkesboro, which was run a week after, was going to be the 5th, and Harry broke a small part worth about 25 cents. It cost him, I think, whatever purse was at that time. I wasn't going to say $1 million, but I don't think it was that high. But the fact of the matter is, I remember that day very, very easily because Rusty Wallace and Harry Gant got into it on a racetrack on an incident. Tore the whole front end of the race car. And Benny Parsons, who was on ESPN that day doing the color commentary, said, Harry's done. He is done. No way he's coming back for that. Old Quantrere, he did come back and went by Brett Bodine late in that race to win. So, I mean, that was my first memory, but just whether it was playing with race cars on the floor or silencing the ESPN broadcast so I could do commentary.
Did you actually do that?
Absolutely. Okay. I most certainly did that. I would have my own little races on the floor while the big race was on TV.
Okay, I did that.
Yeah. My kitchen table was Talladega, for goodness sakes. I mean, and so, but that's all I ever wanted to do. I didn't want to be Dale Earnhardt, or I didn't want to be Rusty Wallace. I wanted to be Ken Squire, Bob Jenkins, Ned Jarrett, Barney Hall,
Benny Parsons.
That's who I wanted to be. And still feel that way.
You were correct. It was the 4th race. It was Darlington, Richmond, Dover, and Martinsville.
See, I should have put a Chick-fil-A meal on this. I'd have easily won that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't doubt Julian. I just didn't remember it like that.
Were you folding laundry playing with your little race cars?
Yeah, that's going to be on the paid version. Y'all are going to have to chip in on some Patreon to get that story. But.
So what brings you here today to Deez Lug Nutz? What is it about racing that you decided was worthwhile to jump into this crazy venture?
Well, that's a really good question, and I don't think I have a very short-winded answer for that. I was just always intrigued by, the drama of it all. I mean, hearing, and I go back to Bob Jenkins and Ned Jarrett and Benny Parsons. I go back to those guys. The way they would describe a race would be like the 4 of us sitting here just talking amongst each other. It was just something like an out-of-body experience for me. Every time I see the cars roll off the start line, I don't care where it is, Callaway, Motor Mile, Martinsville, Daytona, Indianapolis, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, the whole sport is just intriguing to me. The competition, the strategy behind that, it's just something I've always studied throughout my whole life. And now, at 36 years old, here I am doing something with it, here on a podcast. And ultimately, I think that's all of our goals. I don't want to speak for everyone, but we want to entertain the masses. We want to put a little something different out there that's maybe not out there for all the other racing shows, but we just want to cover the sport with integrity and respect and just give it what it deserves. So that's what brings me here.
Dean, before you have to go
I really can't say that I know what first race I went to. I really don't. It probably was Callaway if I had to guess, but I mean to the point from that. But I grew up. I was more of the Dale Earnhardt fan, and then switched over to Kevin Harvick, and still Kevin Harvick to the day. So it's kind of to that point, but. It's just the NASCAR, the late model stocks, is just what trips my trigger. I mean, no in between. The dirt stuff's okay. I'll watch it here occasionally. But just like me and Julian went to South Boston the other weekend to late model stock, that just.
I want to talk about that on this show.
Yeah,
too.
I mean that was like a dream come true. I mean, we talked about that on the way down, on the way back, and for this podcast itself, it's more of, I think, learning the people around here and getting to make the association and making the friends of these people who spend their life savings to race on a Saturday night and tear the damn car up, and then they're back out there the next Saturday night. It's it's kind of one of them things for me more than anything.
That's something great you really touched on, because I've always felt like these guys and girls that do it are, I don't want to say heroes. That might be a little too much, but
they are to some kids out there, some 8-year-old kid.
Yeah, I mean, definitely to kids, but I respect the people that do it so much, because, you know, not saying stick and ball sports aren't dangerous. Of course they are. But to get inside a race car takes a special breed of courage to do that. And Dean, you also took a great point. I mean, the relationships that we are establishing, the networking, is absolutely tremendous. I mean, that was a dream come true for me at South Boston.
Well, I mean, it's like I told you going down the road. I was going to be like a damn 8-year-old kid when we first got there, and that's how I felt. I mean, I wanted to run here, go there, see this, do that. But, you know, you had to be somewhat professional, but...
Yeah, but you do that in a cup race, and you get in the pits, and it's all in your face. You can act, and you can't really associate with the people as you can in like a late model stock, where they're more...
Right.
They're less keyed up. There's less corporate media. You can focus on those.
Well, I mean, there was a couple big names. I mean, we got to talk to them and make some association with them. So, I mean, it's...
Well, not to mention, there are some big names in the press box, too.
Oh, yeah.
And that this should come to a surprise to no one that I would just start talking to randomly. I mean, Brandon White, for instance, writes terrific stuff for NASCAR.com. He was right there. He talked to us like an old friend. I mean, he was tremendous. I mean, Matt Weaver was up there. I mean, I was like, man, these are guys that I read their articles on a daily basis, and here I am sitting next to one of them.
And probably some side hugs in there, wouldn't it, Dean?
Some side hugs?
Yeah.
I think they were sharing bologna burgers over there at one time.
Oh, I mean, if you've never had one, I mean, shoot, you'd be hugging people too. I mean, they are delicious, man. Oh.
So and I haven't had one. So the bologna burgers at South Boston definitely top ace. Dean, you think?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
It had more taste and condiments on it.
Wait a minute, we're gonna get to this later. I forgot. Hold on, we got food coming up. All right,
we're fat and already.
Well,
hungry.
Bowden, how about you? I know we've talked a lot of racing on the Appalachian podcast, but you know, for the sake of bringing it back around.
Ironically, I do believe, and I just was texting with my mom, I'm almost for certain my first cup race.
Is Thomas over?
Damn.
Oh, boy.
Damn, Bodine.
Well, that was a...
All right, so that's what we was looking for.
Hashtag dang it, Bodine.
Hashtag damn it, Bodine. I'm pretty sure, speaking of my mom, that my first cup race was Martinsville Fall 91, same as Julian. I'm almost certain that's it. And I'll stand corrected if it's not. I think I was supposed to go to the spring race, didn't get a ticket. My mom took me back in the fall. Did they race that race on a Monday, or was it on Sunday when Harry Gant won?
Oh, that was a Sunday afternoon.
Okay, it was Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, you're thinking of the following year when my freaking mom, love you by the way, she wouldn't let me go because of this thing called school.
Yeah. I was like, I did go. I checked out one.
What the heck?
I went to Miss Burnett's class and I rolled out, or Miss Campbell. I'm not positive which one it was, and I just rolled out.
Miss Campbell. I had Miss Campbell.
It was Miss Campbell.
Well, I couldn't remember which year it was.
That was the fall of 91, and we started fifth grade.
It would have been 92
when it 92.
92 when it rained down. Okay,
that's correct.
So,
because I know these because actually, off topic, real quick, I ran across our fifth grade, my fifth grade teacher, Miss Hilton.
Oh, did you?
Oh my Lord!
I remember her.
I was pulling out of the spot at the grocery store, and I looked over to my right to check. And I said, "Man, that looks like Miss Hilton." So I stopped, backed up, rolled down the window. I said, "Ma'am," I said, "Are you by chance Miss Hilton?" She said, "Yes." I said, "I was one of your students," and she said, "Oh Lord." And she kind of looked at me for a second. I knew she wouldn't recognize me because of the hair and everything. I said, Billy Riddle. She said, oh, my God. So when a teacher says that, she definitely remembers. She said, I remember a field trip one time where we were coming back from, it was via mine, Luray Caverns, and there was an awful storm. I mean, a terrible storm, a derecho type thing. And she said all I kept saying on the bus was, we're all going to die. We're all going to die all the way up the road. I said, I hate that's your first thing that pops into your head, but. Anyway, that was kind of off topic, but...
So you guys in elementary school, was this before Liam Wade or after?
Post Liam Wade.
This kind of ties me and Jeff together for this show and the other one. So, Bowden, get back to your thoughts about, why you're here and your...
So, yeah, I mean, that was my first race, and I'm pretty sure it was the same one as Julian. And I will look back on pictures and see if we can reference it, but it's beside the point. That's the correct time frame. It's 91, late 91, early 92. And then Bill Elliott went on the tear just after that, 92, winning 4 straight races. And I thought that was going to be the thing, man. It's like, wow, 4 straight wins for Bill was 4 straight for Harry. It was a big deal picking all that up. So, well, anyways, and I actually went to the 92 Richmond race that Bill won, beat Alan Kowicki to the line by
We were best friends. I didn't get an invite, but...
Actually, I didn't even get an invite. They told me the night before that I was going.
Thanks, Risa.
Yeah. Billy, yeah, Mom. Yeah, Billy's looking for that invite still, too. The Pontiac Excitement 400.
To see Bill Elliott win. I never got it.
Yeah, I was sitting on the backstretch at Richmond. I never forget that. But what brings me here is it's NASCAR. I say NASCAR. Racing in general is the only sport that I've ever been able to keep up with nonstop in my life. I've always liked basketball. I got out of basketball. I used to love baseball. I lost my interest in baseball. I'm kind of heavy on football, but it's not like racing. It's like racing. I can pick it up any day of the week and whatever and be interested in it. I know what's going on in the sport. Me and Julian are always talking back and forth about what's going on, rumors. And
well, football is football everywhere you go.
It is.
No matter what, it's football. Racing, you got quarter miles, you got half miles, you got 38, you got low banked, you got high banked, you got sprint cars, you got
it's hard to keep up with more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, so the racing has always filled the sports void in my mind, and I'm a gearhead by trade, and that perfect way to fit.
Well, you also give this podcast legitimacy by being a former pit crew member as well. So you really bring a whole completely different perspective to this game,
Speaking of which, we have I seen yesterday during the race that Chris Jones, local guy, his family owns Magnum Point Marina in Union Hall. He's now the car chief for Martin Truex Jr. He was sitting up on the box yesterday. Thought that was kind of cool that he's another
pretty cool for this area.
He brought that up in the chat. That is pretty neat.
It took me a second to make sure I recognized him, and I said, "Is that Chris?" And I kept looking, and I rewound it, and I looked on the roster. I didn't know he had moved up. I'm pretty sure he started out as a rear end specialist, shock specialist, then moved to a rear tire carrier, interior specialist, and now he's on the box for Martin Truex. And I think he's got a championship with Kyle Busch.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So for you, Bodine, this answer is kind of going to intrigue me more than the rest of them because he's had to sit here and deal with my crap for the past year and a half through the Appalachian Podcast. So I kind of got to wonder how in the hell are you diving into a second venture here, or what is it that because I know you got a lot of other stuff going on. Jeff is actually a pretty big iRacer now these days too. Everybody, so just to get some
my
time,
crew chief sitting here.
Get some time with him.
I'm shocked we got him away from the rig for longer than 30 minutes.
I've had to consolidate that a little bit too. So
we didn't have nothing scheduled tonight. We run 160 laps last night. So.
Yeah, I've had to get Dean as my crew chief because I can't think while I'm racing and do math in my head. So I had to get somebody in there to talk back stuff to and do math. And
that certainly showed in your last race.
Well, you did until lap 120.
Had him in the lead, and he wrecks last night.
And why did he wreck?
Tires. I wore the tires out.
Wore his tires out. Yeah, okay.
Well, we was getting ready to pit.
Yeah.
We were getting ready to pit, and he out there dog licking it and hit the freaking wall last night.
I did. Well, my problem was I didn't really think those guys could make it on 2 stops, and they did. That just screwed me all up. So yeah.
So what brings you here? Why did you agree to come on Deez Lug Nutz?
Because we're able to make this we've done so much with the podcast, and we're able to have so much fun with the racing stuff. It just feels just as natural, and we've talked about doing it and being able to dedicate everything to it. Because with the Appalachian Podcast, we can get off on political stuff, and that's just really not my thing. You know, it's not. I'm better at arguing about it than I am really knowing what the hell I'm talking about. But
it's not necessarily political; it's more cultural. There are a few, but even culture these days, by default, is essentially political because everybody wants to make everything.
I know.
You know what I mean? So you can't even.
Fair point.
So I get that, but continue.
Yeah, so, I mean, for me, it's natural that I can just flow right into this, and I feel like I know I can offer a legitimate take on everything I see in racing versus political or definitely when it comes to cultural, I think I got a good vantage point on food, especially with me and Dean last week. We've experienced every possible type of food you could possibly imagine. We could make a whole show about that, but. So, yeah, I think that me coming in here doing that, it just kind of a natural flow and fit.
And chocolate martinis.
Well, we were going to bring that up later, but that's a good segue.
Well, I appreciate everybody that's here today, and I guess you could kind of say this is my second baby, but this is kind of all of our babies. And before I get into that, I loved racing as a kid. My mom would not be caught dead taking us to a racetrack, but my dad got us on the weekends. So, bowling or Callaway it was, or hockey games, pretty much all the places that the drunks hang out.
Damn.
And I'd go down there and they put on a show. Whitey Taylor back in would put on a show. He'd be out there in his white suit looking like Big and Little Enos from Smokey and the Bandit.
Sure enough.
And he would be in his Cadillac convertible pace car driving around the track. The kids would be out there on the bikes. You'd have the drag races ahead of time and in the late model fields. That's kind of the Dean's point. I fell in love with the late models. And, of course, my dad would watch racing every Sunday. We'd come home from church, and that would be what was on TV. And I started
religiously.
Yeah. So, around 9 or 10 years old, that's when you start really paying attention to that kind of stuff. So I'd sit there and watch it. And he liked Bill Elliott, so I liked Bill Elliott. And fourth grade come along, me and Bodine, we'd known each other since we were, 2 or 3 years old, but we found racing, and we got to become really good friends. And y'all went to that Martinsville race, 2 races before the Richmond race. It was the first one I ever went to, the first Richmond night race.
Yeah.
Got to see her again win that one. And I was hooked for the longest time. And me and Bodine, of course, the next season, as he alluded to, Bill Elliott goes on his 4-run streak and ends the season with so this is what we got. We got the 92 season. Probably one of the greatest years in NASCAR is the first year we were both fully invested. And I was over at Bodine's house every weekend, or he was at my house, and we were glued to the TV. Yeah, and to reach back, one of the big reasons why we did this podcast, look back to the Appalachian Podcast when we had Rick Houston on. We really talked about the entire 92 season and that final race. That was a phenomenal show. Of course,
I think that's what really hooked us. We were both Bill Elliott fans because of our parents, and then when Bill Elliott goes on this tear early in 92,
we're like, oh my God, what the? I mean, this is good.
Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the
Redskins. Then you hear about Bill Elliott's history, the fastest man on the planet. 2:12.809 Talladega, the only man to win the Winston Million.
How many times at your house did we watch
up to that point? Hold on, I seen a Jeff Gordon fan here getting, but at that time he was the only one.
Did Bill Elliott do it more than once?
No.
Doesn't matter. He did it the first time.
No, I was just talking about the point in time and how it.
How many times did we run through those Bill Elliott racing into history and Bill Elliott racing into victory VHSs at your house?
And I actually have found one of those on YouTube. I can't find the one I want where they sung that weird $1 Million Bill from Dawsonville song, but the other ones I've been able to. Yeah,
I don't know where it's at.
And Gordon Perkle. I
met him a couple years ago.
Oh, that's right, you did.
Isn't that song on the if you listen to the Dale Jr. download with Jeffrey Bodine, they have a CD of nothing but NASCAR drivers singing songs. Isn't it on that album?
I don't think it is, no.
Or maybe on a different one.
$1 Million Bill from Dawsonville.
Look out, the bird is on the loose again. He's got one thing on his mind.
And driving Coors number 9 down into Victory Lane at the end.
Everybody just tuned out after they started singing.
Yeah. The first show is just
the end of that shit
in the
right
crapper.
There. We got Eminem and his co-part in here.
Right? I can't believe we both come up with that.
Hey, that's probably the only time you'll ever hear me and Bodine sing into
duet.
yeah. So yeah, I fell in love. So back to it. I fell
Coming
in love.
to the Harvester near you.
If anybody pays to come see us sing, God bless you. Just
So next Josh
don't
Rice and
waste your
Kyle
time.
Forey in here tonight.
So yeah, I fell in love, and that brought on me and Bowden's friendship, and because of that, we've been friends for here going on 30, 35 years because of racing. And honestly, I don't know if it's because Earnhardt died, or I don't know if there's a ton of other factors that kind of went into it. It's probably me going in different directions in my life, but kind of got away from racing a little bit. And then NASCAR started doing a lot of things that kind of just left a bad taste in my mouth. It seemed like they were biting the hand that fed them. They weren't really, I don't know. We've talked about this before, and we'll get into it.
And I believe you are right.
Being said, after COVID, and Bowden's brought this up many times, and to Julian's credit, a short track renaissance. There's a racing renaissance going on, and that's what I fell in love with, is the short tracks. And I see the people we've met and talked to from the Appalachian Podcast, and the racing fans out there are some of the most respectful, the most diehard. They tune into our shows. The racing shows make up probably 9 out of the top 12 or 13 shows we've done as far as download numbers and everything. People just want to tune in and listen to the racing. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to give these people an opportunity to listen to some of these people and to kind of give our perspective on things. And I think that each one of you all, I asked you all to come on and do this sort of thing because I knew Bodine already from our show, whatever. Dean worked very, very hard to get a lot of these racing guests on the Appalachian Podcast. I know he really enjoys racing a lot, and it's good to have a fourth perspective. And Julian, of course, as Bodine has said all along, as a historian and as a student of the sport, you bring an awful lot to the table, and I think what we've got right here is a fantastic opportunity to have a lot of fun and have a lot of people tune in and make a lot of connections.
It's actually because I don't have a life.
If we didn't destroy him with our duet.
That's why I'm here as well.
We're going to make a life, Julian. We're going to make.
So,
we're going to make you famous.
That being said, our first topic.
Are we dropping the green flag here, fellas?
I'm going to bring us into our first topic, and I'm going to do this for Bodine. I don't even know what's on the sheet. We got through the one intro, but I'm going to give him his due.
Well,
the first one we're going to start off with, Bodine, let's talk about the next-gen cars.
Uh-oh. So it's going to lead us into the whole topic of the AM Better 301, and, I was a big proponent of these next-gen cars, straight from the chat. It's no doubt. And there's some good, there's some bad with it. Overall, I think the business model should work. I think the business model of this car, where it's supposed to align, should work if the TV deal is properly renegotiated. And that's a big thing, because the purpose behind the car essentially was to make it where anybody could build a car. Literally, we could go downstairs in Billy's garage here, buy a kit for a next-gen chassis and put it together. Now, we can't afford that or the motor, don't get me wrong, but anybody that wanted to could. That is what's happened. That same chassis that Hendrick Motorsport has is the same chassis that Cody Ware has. Same parts built by the same people and just assembled and put together.
But you say people, and that's where I'm going to...
Yeah, that's where it changes.
That's where I'm going to disagree.
I know.
You still have to have the right people to work on these race cars.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
So those people that's working on Hendrick, they ain't working on Cody Ware's cars.
Correct.
I guarantee you that.
Well, I want to know something first too. When you say that it's meant, the purpose is for somebody to be able to go down in our garage and put it together hypothetically, but I've seen y'all have discussions on charters so many times and how hard they are to get. So, if you got charters, it's that hard to break into it. Then is it really meant for anybody to be able to put something together?
Julian's better on the charters than I am, because I've had a hard time wrapping my head around some business aspects of it.
The thing about the charters is, for those of you that don't know, what a charter basically allows you to a guaranteed spot in the race. There's only 36 charters per week.
And a guaranteed number of money.
Yes.
Amount. Whether we don't know what that piece is because it's confidential.
No, that they will not release that information. But essentially, if you are a charter team, like I said, you're guaranteed a spot in every race. You get more piece of the pie when it comes to the purse. But also, they get part of that TV deal, the big TV contract that's out there, compared to a non-chartered car. And that's why you don't see a lot of these out here. Okay, we've had 36 car fields most of the year. You know, I think Daytona we had 40, maybe Talladega a couple more. But for the most part, it's been 36 cars showing up every week. And you know why that is? Because if you don't have a piece of this charter,
you can't afford to run.
It does not pay you to run.
So hypothetically speaking, we could build a car out here, but we're not guaranteed to hardly win any money, and we're probably going to go in more debt than we can.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so this is where the TV deal is important.
So if like Floyd Money Mayweather or Elon Musk wanted to go out there and race without a charter, they would be okay. But
but even that, it's still not worth it. It's still not worth it in the bottom line because you're basically looked at as an outsider.
Yeah,
at this point.
And how you're going to look, I mean, even Floyd Mayweather was that way too without the charter. That's why we keep saying NASCAR's and the team's renegotiation on this TV deal is so important about how it goes. The tracks, I've had it explained to me by somebody, and I ain't going to throw them out there. If we divide the I think it's divided into chunks, like 3 or 4 different chunks. The teams get like a small chunk of like 10 or 15%, and the tracks get like 25% or so. Well, the teams are saying, why do the tracks get the money from attendance, the money from concessions, and parking? Everything goes to the track. Why do they also get this huge chunk? And that's what the teams are saying. We want to swap the chunk. We want to give them the smaller chunk, and we want to take the bigger chunk. And when we do that, there's going to be more. They're going to expand the charters, in theory, is what we've heard.
2024 is going to be a huge year for NASCAR. It's expected that the TV agreement should be re-signed. By who? We don't know.
Yep.
Fox, NBC.
We're all hoping NBC.
Hearing ESPN may be a factor. CBS could get into the game again. They've been doing the SRX coverage. But the big thing is the charter agreement. The charter agreement is over after 2024. And from what we're hearing, these charters are worth $500,000.
We don't really know.
Not $500,000.
I was going to say between $25 and $50 million.
Yeah.
So
absolutely misspoke. They're obviously worth more than $500,000, but they are very hard to come by.
And so that's where
Dale Jr. can't even get one.
Yeah, Dale
right
Jr.
now.
can't get one.
And
right
he
now.
is the Pied Piper of everything racing, right?
Yeah. So that's where this next gen car has become helpful in theory. That that if you're trying to get investors or you're trying to get sponsors, when they look and invest in a new team, they say, well, if I put out $100 million, I can have the same thing as Hendrick Motorsports. We just got to get the right people. When the old cars are 50 years of mechanical research and sims and stuff that you have to get together that was a culmination into a car, when now it's just a kit. It's attractive and it's lucrative, but also what's going to change is those charters are going to be treated like stocks on a stock market. As that TV deal gets bigger, that charter is going to grow. And if it's 25 now, well, the teams get a bigger chunk of it.
Not
it
only
could go
that,
to 50.
but it's going to be treated like a franchise.
Yeah,
you know, the NFL franchise is worth billions of dollars.
Now you bring up an interesting point, and I want to get to that here in 1 second. Now, when I think about the next gen cars, I will give y'all credit. The racing, I think, has been far superior than it has been in the last few years. I actually find myself tuning in on Sundays and being entertained. The racing, aside from Martinsville, the one race you wanted to be good at, I think the racing has been fairly good. And to kind of tease one of our later segments about things you want to get fired up about, I mean, let's look at the first-time winners we've had this year. Ross Chastain, Daniel Suarez. You know, Christopher Bell just won his second race. There is so much parity right now. I'm going to go ahead and I'll give the next-gen car a B+, A-.
I'm going
the
with
first
B+.
half of the season. As far as just from a fan perspective who doesn't really get into the X's and O's, I have been entertained. I have tuned in on Sunday, and I've enjoyed it.
If you haven't been entertained by this year's racing, there's nothing we can do for you.
I really think
I'm sorry.
I do too, especially when I look at this past weekend's race. I thought New Hampshire was a competitive race. It wasn't entertaining as far as drama and wrecks. Well, I ain't going to say that, but But in some parts, it wasn't. I thought New Hampshire was a good race, and Billy brought it up and said, why does everybody hate New Hampshire? I'm like, we don't. But it's poorly attended.
It is.
It looked like a good crowd yesterday, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, when it had 2 dates, it was poorly attended. I mean, being specific, it's a perfect track for one race. It does not constitute 2 races, in my opinion, just because of the way it's able to generate crowd. I would love to say just because it's a great race and have 50 races there a week or a year, but we can't.
And the thing of it is, and maybe I should save this for the rant. I don't know, but they didn't put any stupid resin on the racetrack.
Thank God.
Okay. Hey, racetracks, stop putting this stuff on the freaking racetracks.
Well, it worked at Bristol, and now they all think they have to do it.
Okay, that's the only place it's
That's
worked
what I'm saying. It's the only place it's worked at, and they feel like they got to put it on.
Didn't work at Texas. That was awful.
I'm surprised they didn't put resin at Coda just to make sure it was cool.
Well, let's also give us weekend credit. We give it credit down here in the South, much like we did the Martinsville weekend when the Smart Mods were at Callaway. Whatever was going on up north this weekend was really good because you had a fantastic race at Stafford. I caught that on Flow Racing on Friday night. And, of course, you had not the Smart Mods. You had the Northern Mods racing on Saturday, Julian. And I don't know if you tuned into that like I did, but that was one hell of a race with a fantastic finish.
I absolutely watched that.
So,
race.
A lot of places up north this weekend circled their time frame around, New Hampshire, and it seemed to work out. There was a lot of good stuff going on there this weekend, including, the New Hampshire race, which, like I said to y'all, to me, it's like Martinsville times 2. If Dover is Bristol times 2, New Hampshire should be Martinsville. I've always enjoyed it, and I've always wanted to go up there and watch a race.
Oh, I'd love to go there.
That's actually on our topics here for today. I was trying to get through through that, and we was actually going to get to that one especially.
Well, I want to go back real quick, and
because
Julian brought up a really interesting point about the franchises, and so if the next gen cars are kind of doing their purpose of bringing people back to the track, NASCAR is starting to attract fans again, and somehow, some way, they are getting back some of their older fans at the same time. They are starting to reach a bigger market. And if they continue with this success, with the way the charters are, in 10 to 12 years, would we be looking at more of a NFL style thing where maybe a team owner only has 1, maybe 2 at the most, because so many people get interested in it, they want to go invest in one of these charters? Could it be the potential end of these multi-car teams? Or does the money give them so much dominance they can still continue to keep?
That's a tremendous point.
Or do we have 80 cars?
Because think if just LeBron said, "Man, I want to buy a charter." Who is going to deny LeBron James? I mean, how can they justify?
Well, technically, he's already got one, Roush Fenway Racing, but still.
Yeah, go ahead, Julian. I got a thought on this.
The fact of the matter is, I think that's what NASCAR was headed to, was franchising when it comes to certain owners, but you're going to run into a problem. And we're already starting to see this now with Richard Childress isn't getting any younger.
Nope.
Rick Hendrick's not getting any younger. Now, Jeff Gordon, for all intents and purposes, he's the guy at Hendrick Motorsports right now. Okay, you got Brad Keselowski. He's come in for Jack Roush.
Which I think was a great move on
and
Jack's
that's a
part.
fantastic move.
And it's starting to work.
And it is. But you got to think about Joe Gibbs. I mean,
he's not a spring chicken, yeah.
No, I mean, and I know his family's, probably going to take it over. Coy Gibbs, somebody like that. Even Roger Penske. Roger Pensche's 80-some years old.
I thought Roger Penske was on.
Yes, but 90s. if the TV show Yellowstone has taught us anything, then leaving things to your kids is, there's a lot of taxes involved. There's a lot of things like this that can cause it to be broken up. I mean, is that some of the things some of these empires are looking at?
85.
I think you're going to see a couple of these owners sell some charters, and I don't know if I should say this or not. It might be considered a hot take, but I think Joe Gibbs is going to sell one of his charters to Denny Hamlin. I see that.
You think so?
I see that coming with the Tyler Reddick announcement last week. Are they doing a third charter? Does Kurt Busch? Because Kurt Busch, a lot of people don't realize Kurt Busch has been offered a role behind the scenes at 2311 Racing, and I think he'll do very well at that.
Kurt Busch, no matter his controversial stance or the way he acts, makes everything in racing that he touches better.
Oh, absolutely. Every seat he's gotten in, it's gotten better.
James Finch's car, the crew hated him, but they were running up front. They were so happy to see Kurt Busch leave that the next weekend they put a big giant smiley face on the hood. Well, but they run terrible.
Well, he turned Front Row Motorsports into a contender.
Yeah,
Furniture
Row was nothing. I mean, Reagan Smith did win that one race at Darlington, pit strategy. But
for Reagan Smith to win in that team is still, I mean, that's a phenomenal feat.
To me, Kurt Busch, everything he touches turns to gold. When
then it turns
to
shit, though.
Yeah, when he left James Finch, they would run terrible. I'll just never forget that big old smiley. Who did he put in the car? AJ Allmendinger?
Somewhere like that. Well, I know AJ eventually
we can go back in time. Jimmy Spencer about yanked him out of the car and whooped his hind end that one time.
I think it was
Jimmy Spencer got suspended for a race after that.
He did.
Too.
Yeah. He did because Kurt Busch mentioned something about his mama or something. Yeah.
He threatened his family or something, according to Jimmy. He threatened his family.
Not that Jimmy would lie. But I'm sure it's something there, and it might have been.
This next-gen car, though, going back to this car is doing exactly what NASCAR intended it for. We need parity in the sport. Yeah. You know, yes, the same teams are going to rise to the top. I mean, look at Chase Elliott right now. Okay, Chase Elliott, he's leading the points. He's got 4 top 2 finishes back-to-back. You know, he's starting to really be that number one guy, him and Ross Chastain. But if you look through the field, like, one week Ryan Blaney runs really well, and then yesterday he laid an egg. Like, where was Ryan Blaney yesterday?
Yeah, and you look back, we figured Kyle Larson would just be ripping the track.
Where's he been all season?
Yeah, and all of a sudden you've got Chase Elliott, the 2020 Cup champion, is maybe the favorite right now. No, it didn't maybe. Right now I'd say Chase Elliott is the champion.
He is the favorite right
absolutely.
Now.
As of right now.
I know you've been on a cruise ship, but have you been watching the last 4 weeks?
I have. I mean, I think Ryan Blaney was before. And I think that he's laid an egg, like you say.
They were really disappointed yesterday. I thought the Fords in general at Loudon yesterday was very disappointing. But then again, they were really good at, I consider Gateway de facto Loudon. Yeah. Obviously there's differences, but Fords ran really good at Gateway. And then at Loudon, where were the Fords? I mean, Kevin Harvick had the best, that's your boy, Dean. I mean, Kevin Harvick had the best Ford all throughout the race. Just makes you wonder about pit strategy because him and Martin Truex were the class of the field.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that though. Harvick and Truex's pit strategy, and I didn't really pick up a lot on it. What exactly went on with that intrigued you so much?
The fact they took 2 tires. They took 2 tires and they never could catch up with the pit strategy. The pit strategy just screwed them both. I mean, Christopher Bell's team had a lightning fast pit stop.
Right. Which has struggled all year. Christopher Bell's team's been terrible. And then they finally start laying it down.
Had some bad luck striking.
And Kevin Harvick's pit crew has been terrible. And this weekend, both of these teams just decided to get their shit together. I thought that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, what if you're Martin Truex Jr.? I mean, you need a win to get in these playoffs, and you're beat by your teammate who also needed that. And now, if you're Martin Truex Jr., you are in a very precarious position. One more winner outside that top 16, and Martin Truex is outside of the playoffs. Kevin Harvick could win at Pocono this week, which, by the way, he was less than 20 points out of the cut line, but because of Christopher Bell's win yesterday, he's 66 points out. So, isn't that kind of interesting? You got the 3rd and 4th points people right now, Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr. They're 3rd and 4th in the points. Let's take away the playoffs right now. They're 3rd and 4th in points. And they could miss the playoffs if a Kevin Harvick wins or, an Eric Jones wins. Because, that's possible.
Well, they've been actually performing really well, the 43 has been. And really, we could have seen Corey LaJoie win last week at Atlanta, and then that would have really...
Chase Elliott ran him up the wall.
And that would have really screwed up Kevin Harvick.
Everybody talks about Ross Chastain being the bad guy, but here's Chase Elliott wrecking a poor Spire car.
Well, Ross Chastain is accused of doing it every week, so I thought, that's another topic.
Yeah, but the point, that could be. You're right.
But hey, to get to y'all's point though, real quick, I think currently Chase Elliott plus 500. Larson 600. Ross Chastain 650. Blaney, Kyle Busch, Denny 750 to win the championship right now.
And Denny Hamlin at plus 750 to win the championship?
Yep.
Wow, Vegas is really on top of him because I don't think he's a championship material at all.
I don't think the Toyotas are, period. Ooh, did I touch on something?
I mean, Denny Hamlin?
I do not think the Toyotas are championship contenders.
It's a lot of respect they're giving Kyle Larson, too, by the way.
I noticed that.
I mean, and it's hard not to. I mean, he's ran consistent this year, but he's not getting the W's like he did a year ago.
And I say I don't think Toyotas are championship contenders coming off a win. I actually don't. Kurt Busch could turn it on at any time, so that could be the one Toyota that really gets it done. But honestly, the Toyotas have impressed in practice and qualifying, then laid eggs in the race. And
well, I guess we have kind of segued into the next one we want to talk about this weekend, and y'all kind of have touched on the race and overall thoughts, though, about Sunday. I mean, how do you think?
I enjoyed Sunday's race.
I thought that was a good competitive race. I thought it was a lot of good racing. It wasn't the most dramatic, but it really had good racing all throughout the field. I think they brought a good tire up there that fell off good with the heat.
And I think that's very important is the tire because that's why Martinsville, I will say this till I'm blue in the face, that's why Martinsville was not the classic Martinsville race as the tire compound they
cold
brought.
And hard.
Not to mention it was 20 degrees there either. But the tire that Goodyear brought to Loudon, I thought really did well, and the high temperatures.
So here's what I'm worried about with Martinsville. Let me throw this back to Martinsville. They've been making a lot of changes. They've pulled the lower underbody off, and they've pulled the diffuser off in tests for Martinsville. We really haven't seen a fair shake on this car at Martinsville because of the temperature. I hope they don't over-adjust this thing by taking parts and throwing them every which way.
Yeah, but are you really going to see it in the fall?
I don't think so.
I mean, who knows what you're going to get in the fall? You could still get the same weather forecast.
We've said all along that Martinsville's needs a summer spot in their schedule, but anyways.
I agree 100%.
But I enjoyed that race yesterday. The strategy was really good. I mean,
what was Austin Dillon doing?
That's what I want to know. I mean, I know y'all. Dean, did you see that? Did you see?
I seen some of that yesterday, but
we got behind this hauler coming down the road this weekend. I told my daughter to flip him off, but my wife didn't think too much of it.
I'm just kidding. Race drivers have a long memory.
They do, but
there was an incident last year at Michigan where Brad Keselowski just turned Austin into the fence.
Yeah,
and Austin was running tremendous that day and really needed that for points last year. And Austin seemed to have brung that up without actually saying this is what happened.
And it was interesting because Brad's response, he just went total psycho race car driver.
He did, but after the race, he was, he put that owner
DW
cap
hat
on.
He put the DW hat on.
He really did. He was like, I'm not going to say this. I'm going to be a little more respectful to the media.
Those were one of my favorite days of interviews when they would ask to interview Darrell Waltrip, and he'd interview as a driver, then he'd flip his cap up and interview as a car owner. And that was Brad Keselowski, the car owner there. Is like, let's figure this out.
Well, what do you guys think? I mean, do you think it was just off that incident? I mean, I seemed like he had another incident yesterday that maybe the cameras didn't catch, but when you're running for 20th, I mean, your cameras aren't going to necessarily catch you. Even though Brad did have a good run yesterday. He finished in 7th place.
He did.
Best finish of the year.
He's lucky he didn't destroy his race car in that little skirmish.
Well, Jeff, I know you're going to love this. The old car, that car would have been behind the wall.
Yep. Yeah, that sheet metal would have been up, and that carbon fiber just bounced right back out. Although those toe links are a little sensitive, but
which that's another thing I like about this next gen car. They can bounce off the wall. I mean, you've seen Kyle Larson bounce off the wall 4 or 5 times in a race, and he's running second or third. You know what I mean? I like that. I don't think that one mistake in a 500 or 600 mile race should take out your favorite driver. I think it's better for the product when you have more drivers running at the end. I mean, how many times this season have we seen Ross Chastain hit somebody or hit something 6 or 7 times, go a lap or 2 down, or Kyle Busch or anybody? I mean, it's made for a good.
Kyle Larson definitely showed that he was able to do that.
And showed how resilient this car is.
Somebody asked Brad, was he going to be on Austin Dillon's new TV show? He said, I probably won't get a cameo on there.
which has been an interesting show to say the least. I watched.
So y'all DVR that, right?
I watched a couple.
I watched a little bit of it yesterday, just because I've been around Austin and Whitney a little bit here and there, and just knowing their lifestyle and stuff. I mean, it's
it's
a little interesting. A little interesting.
Name drop. Well, I'll just happen to be around.
I got pictures to prove it.
You know, Austin and Whitney. You sound like me at the freaking office for about 2 weeks. I was like, well, you should have heard us in the media center on Saturday, or you should have heard this from the media. So I was really lighting that up. Just ask people I work with. I was more nauseating than ever.
Well, let's talk about some of the other racing for this weekend, because that's another thing I really want this show to focus on. I want to be able to talk about the NASCAR weekend and everything that kind of goes down from that. And if you've got Flow Racing, then you have a tremendous opportunity to watch racing every single day. Got a chance to catch Stafford Speedway, the mods on Friday night. That was one hell of a race. I can't pretend like I know most of the drivers there because it's the first time I've tuned in, but that's a good opportunity to catch some other different people going on a random Friday night. Saturday night, before we get into the Madhouse, let's talk a little SRX.
Yeah, let's talk about SRX.
I have actually sat down, and Scott Minix comes over to my house every Saturday, and he'll bring steaks or ribs, or I'll bring them, because I can't really do much with a kid right now. So he'll come over here, and we'll fire something up, and we've watched every single SRX race, and I have...
Y'all cook onions?
No. I have thoroughly enjoyed the SRX series. Hey, shout out to former guest of the Appalachian Podcast, Bobby Labonte, for bringing home a W last weekend.
It was only one of the
Nashville,
races I hadn't enjoyed.
Yeah.
It was the one before Nashville.
South Boston?
No, it was one between
Boston,
South
the one I
Boston.
watched.
Stafford was before Nashville.
It wasn't they did not put on a good show.
It was
it
Stafford.
Stafford?
Yeah, because it was Five Flags, and then...
Five Flags, South Boston,
Stafford,
Nashville, and then Federated Auto
tracks.
Parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I-55.
Ken Schrader's little racetrack.
And then Sharon Speedway's next week.
There was some drama in that. I remember Bobby Labonte.
Well, you know who owns that track, right?
Who's that?
Dave Blaney owns that track they're running at this weekend.
Sharon?
Yeah, he sure does. Absolutely.
I'll be daggone. So, but the
Isn't
SRX...
Dave going to be in there?
I don't know.
But
I read something Dave was racing.
Wouldn't surprise me if it's SRX.
If it's his track.
Yeah.
I mean, Ken Schrader, it was his
and
track.
I think Ryan might be running. I mean, they're at Pocono. That's not too far.
No.
Let's get out the old Google machine
Get the old
while we
Google
talk
machine
about
there, Julian.
So, what was interesting I watched, and we're going back to SRX, is how cool their friggin' pace car is. It's an old 30s model Ford coupe, it looks like, that they just get out there and paint it up as a pace car. And I remember the weekend before we left, there was the door kept flying open on the passenger side, and Tony Stewart would drive up beside it and slam into it and close it.
Easy, Stewart.
So, first of all, I just tried typing in SRX, and I went a little fast. Typed in another letter instead of R.
Did it bring up pictures of fancy-looking women pouring mayonnaise all over their delicious bodies?
I'm going to throw up now.
I sent Julian some pictures earlier.
Yeah, and they are not suitable for the show. Yeah, I'm all distracted now, but like I was getting ready to say,
he got the old hub.
Dave and Ryan Blaney will be running this weekend at Sharon Speedway.
Who else do we got? What's the rest of the lineup?
So I just see those two, and I'm all distracted now with mayo. I can't even.
We know.
Like, God, that's such a horrible condiment.
Ryan Forbes did bring up a great point about this. The SRX using their drones to follow the races is pretty cool. I think it's a great angle. I don't think they'll be able to keep up with the Cup cars, but I would like to see them try. I don't know. They look to me like the top speed for most drones is around 85, 90 miles an hour for the faster ones. So I don't know. You get over that at Martinsville, you might be able to follow them on corner exits and stuff. But I thought that was kind of cool, the angle. It is really neat to see.
Yeah, I think you could. I think you could do that at a place like Martinsville, and that part is really cool.
It is
to do that, but I think if you try to do it at like Daytona or Talladega, you might have your hands.
Well, the one they use barely keeps up. They buzz it down the backstretch, and it doesn't keep up. Rather, I mean, they're still going 100 miles an hour faster than it can go. But
well, I mean, let's just talk about all the things SRX Series does. They're coming to some of these local small venues.
Yeah.
and they are filling them up week after
That's
week.
what's getting me is the attendance, is how well they're attended. Because, and I guess it's because you're bringing in stars. And Tony Stewart's really carrying the weight there, in my opinion. I think his star power is still there, and I believe when you look at all these bringing across all platforms of racing, Ernie Francis Jr.
Well, I think it also goes back to Julian's, renaissance.
It is, I think it's hitting it at the right time.
They're hitting it at the right time, and they've got the right drivers. You're mixing in some of the biggest names of our childhoods, of our last 20 years. And what they do a really good job of is each week they bring in somebody local. I thought, Peyton Sellers at South Boston, Bubba Pollard at Five Flags,
and they'll hold
Hirschman up in Stafford.
And what's interesting is they hold local competitions for it, like Nashville. That it was a lady that drove, and I don't remember her name, that drove
Brittany
in the.
Zamora?
Okay, she drove at the Nashville race. Well, Nashville held a local competition in one of the races to be able to get that spot.
Yeah, you had to win a big race at Stafford in the mods, and
this is where SRX is getting it right compared to others. And they have the ability to do this, as they already said. Well, we're going to have the wild card car.
Yeah.
We're not always going to have 12 cars. We're going to have 13. Chase Elliott's scheduled to run this weekend at Sharon Speedway as well. So, that's going to be a must-see event.
Oh, yeah, and he's going to bring a crowd. And
right
it is.
there. And
how they schedule it, number one, because it's local, a lot of times, 2 cup events, and being able to bring those cup drivers in makes a big deal.
And let's also talk about they leave you wanting more. It's only 6 races. It's a very short, very small schedule. Somebody like Bobby Labonte has been able to run the first half of the Smart Mod Tour. Now he can run SRX for 6 weeks and then jump right back into the Smart Mods and compete for that title as well. They really have done a good job of marketing and making you want to prepare for it next year because it's been so limited.
And the local promoters, I was
are eating it up.
To say they're doing an awesome thing by, like y'all said, getting the local stars involved. I think that's really what's separating them from the rest, because NASCAR, I don't know how feasible this could be. You have a local star run a cup car. I know Trackhouse is kind of doing that with the Ringer. They're having Kimi Räikkönen run the Watkins Glen Cup race.
Well, it used to be done a lot in theory. Back in the day in the 70s and 80s, we used to see it. I agree. I think that's what they want to do, but is it going to do it? I don't know.
Because I think that would be great to have like a Ringer from, like a Lane Riggs at South Boston, or, a Kyle Dudley at Motor Mile. Have a competition where they could get a truck ride, or I'm not talking about a
Isn't that how Tyler Carpenter?
Got his ride?
That is
how he got his ride.
Yes.
And this is race. And this is kind of doing that role in reverse, because it's difficult to put one of those drivers to fund them to get into a big car, but we can put them in an SRX car. And, and what's interesting about these SRX cars, and I learned this today on a podcast that we're going to talk about later on, each crew chief is assigned 4 cars. Tony Eury Jr. at Fury Racing, which also builds most of the modifieds now in the area, they built all the race cars for SRX. They're Elmore engines, all crate motors essentially, or all spec engines rather, as we want to call them. And they're all prepared by Ray Evernham. And Tony Eury Jr. built them. He crew chiefs 4 cars. I think they're selected randomly and they rotate weekend to weekend. So he gets 4 drivers. He said one week he had Tony Stewart, the other weekend he had Bill Elliott, things like that. It changes out, and one crew chiefs 4 cars. So there's some weird parity that goes on there, trying to rotate it around. And the Elmore guys come up and tune the engines. The Fury guys come up and tune the cars and put them all out there, and they make very few changes to them.
Well, here's a good hypothetical. If you want to talk about, these events that people race their way into some of this SRX stuff, how far are we away from somebody getting a ride in an SRX race based off of an iRacing league or something to that nature? Maybe SRX, maybe Busch, maybe trucks.
I don't think, or
Xfinity,
my initial thought was like,
it's a huge deal.
No way.
But
then I had to think about it.
William Byron is the number one example of this. That's where he came from. He came from the iRacing community, and now look at him. iRacing...
Was he the one that Ryan Forbes considers a hack?
That's who Ryan Forbes considers a hack. But Ryan Forbes is also a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Well, he loses credibility there.
He's a Virginia Tech fan.
Well, he's back in my good graces.
Okay, he couldn't tell you who his baseball team is. I mean, one day it's
whoever's playing against the Red Sox.
Whoever's playing against the Red Sox.
Most time it's the Giants.
Yeah.
He's always wearing a San Francisco hat.
Or he's got a I could have swore I saw him with a Pirates hat.
You did.
But seriously, though, I mean, that's. I think
it's possible.
You know what? Maybe if the SRX sticks around 4 or 5 years and they get really big, maybe add another race into a specific track and say, all right, big iRacing. Think about the money that would be tied into that. Say, hey, Tony Stewart will, a few $100,000 promote this big iRacing event. You watch it on TV, and then a couple months later, that person gets to go race at that track.
Yeah,
it's interesting. I don't think it's unheard of.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I know we got the iRacer in here. Jeff Taylor. I mean,
I'm the rookie though, but
yeah. Well, you really showed that with the tires you wore out last night.
I did.
That's besides the point.
Which I can share that video.
That's a good point. I mean, I don't think I've really thought a lot about that, to be honest with you.
But you don't until you think about William Byron. It's like, well, that is possible.
William Byron is the poster child for iRacing. I mean. So, that's a good point. But, the business model for SRX is definitely where it's at.
And it's simple.
It is simple, and that's what racing should be. It should be, the model should be simple, but the actual competition should not, if that makes sense. Because if it was easy, I could get in there and do it.
Yeah.
And I can't do it. I'm just a schmuck who reports it. Okay?
They look like cars that are hard to drive.
I couldn't go in there and drive it.
Yeah.
So...
I couldn't even fit in it. Well,
seeing them running the dirt, and I'll be honest with you, this week I tuned in a little bit on Flow Racing to some of the Lucas dirt. I'm going to tell you what, I'm kind of hooked. I've never really paid much of attention. I kind of have started here lately, because of you guys and stuff, and my God, they're sitting there running them dirt late models into the turns. They're running 3 wide, running 3 different grooves. And if Asphalt guys try to run 3 wide into a short track like that, they would all 3 be into the wall and into the fence. But them guys, it's something else. It was a blast watching that stuff. I really want to make my way to some dirt tracks now.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope there because you'll get into it hot and heavy there. That dirt track racing is something else. And to see Scott Bloomquist,
so exciting.
See Scott Bloomquist drive a dirt late model. It doesn't get any better than that. And Jonathan Davenport's actually got pretty big too in these recent years.
I was once again last night. We were kind of flipping around on Flow Racing, and and this is a good segue into how we want to talk about local racing. But I flipped it over and nothing was happening for Bowman Gray. So I was like, well, dang on, is Bowman Gray not running this weekend? And I'm looking at my internet, and JB Cole's hanging out in Galax. I'm like, what the heck? Okay. And then one of y'all two had texted back, said, nope, they're racing running there. But I was watching With Speedway, and With Speedway looked like a lot of fun, too. I don't know why I haven't made my way down there yet, just down the road in Royal Retreat. Dirt, 3/4, third mile.
I think it's a half mile, isn't it?
I think it's like 3/8 maybe.
I can't remember.
There's so many good dirt tracks to be around this area, but, one that's already caught my eye is, the World of Outlaws is having the World Finals in Charlotte.
Yep, Mike goes there every year.
And, that's like
camps.
That's 3 hours up the road. There's no reason why we can't do that.
They run that on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night.
Yeah, I've never been to a dirt race.
Really?
I have never been to a dirt race.
Oak Level's the only one I've ever been to.
If I've been to Oak Level, I don't remember going. Let's put it that way.
I remember watching Mike Toller run. That's why I went. That's why we went.
Those dirt late models are intriguing because they're a direct drive. They have a weird sound to them, and they just roar around the track, and they spin, and it's wild to watch them, and the noise is unique to dirt racing.
The only one I've been is to With.
Yeah, we went to the Carolina
Carolina Classic.
Carolina Clash super late models.
Mm-hmm. They had the Southern Nationals there this weekend is what they had going on, and it was tough. I was trying to, flipping back and forth, and I just wanted to bring that up that I have never really been much of a fan of the dirt, but watching them guys go this past week in Lucas Oil Dirt Series, and I'm kind of I need to stay away from it because it's kind of like heroin. I'm going to keep chasing.
That's why
that
I told you. I'm like,
he
getting into dirt racing. That's a slippery slope.
Only time I watch it, some guy shows on Dirt Vision or whatever on TikTok. he puts up the live feed, so I get to watch it for free. Don't have to pay for it. So I mean, it's the only time I get to the only time I watch it.
Well, no more. The damn feds are going to be after it now. But
and you know, along the times we'll make our way, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about dirt racing on this podcast. And Deez Lug Nutz when we get here and there. I'd like to reach out to a couple dirt racers here and there as well, and you know,
in the NASCAR world, did try to copy dirt late models a little bit, and especially if we go back to some cheating stories. Jeff Gordon got caught at Darlington moving the left rear tire in so much going around the turn that it clipped the battery box and cut the tire down. Well, that's essentially how these dirt late models they have bars that are mounted to heim joints and rotates that rear end, and it just shoves itself forward to make the car turn.
Now, I take issue with what you just said. Cheating?
I was waiting on it.
Cheating's the wrong word because even I take issue with it.
Cheating.
He got accused
Jeff
of
Gordon,
cheating.
The GOAT?
He got accused of
Hold
cheating.
on now.
Shots fired. Shots fired. No.
The GOAT.
That was pretty effective, though. I mean,
GOAT. I don't know.
like, it was not blatantly cheating.
Chris Williams is listening to this podcast right now, and his teeth are grit. When you said Jeff Gordon the GOAT, I'm just saying.
I don't say.
Hey, it makes Jeff Bodine.
Well, it makes me think. It will's turn when you say that. So, in fairness, okay, Jeff Gordon got caught manipulating the rule book. How about we
Ray
say
Evernham?
That? No, it was after that. This was in the COT. This was.
Oh, it was Letarte.
Yeah, I think it was.
That was Letarte that did
I don't know if it was Letarte or Gustafson. I think it may have been in the Gustafson era.
Gustafson was at the end.
Yeah, I think it was in the Gustafson era.
I believe it was the. I think it was the.
The damn rear, the left rear tire was moving so far forward that there's a bolt that holds the battery box in, and it cut itself down on that bolt. So, anyways, going on, dirt racing. We'll see what we can do there, and
I enjoy it.
See if we can find us a race to get to.
I implore people to tune in. It really has gotten my juices flowing here, watching here lately. Also, Steve Post talking about what's that track down in Carolina he's always going to. I'd like to go down there and watch a race.
Millbridge.
Yes, I'd like to go down there.
I would love to go to Millbridge.
I'm going to have to text him. I texted him this weekend, and
they run on odd nights like Tuesday and Wednesdays during the summer.
Asking if he's going to be down in Wilkesboro, which we'll get to. And anyway, I'd like to go down there and check one of those races out. But before we get too far off topic from dirt racing, because we are not really much of a dirt racing podcast, let's talk about this weekend's race.
The mess at the Madhouse.
The Madhouse. Let's talk. We would be remiss. And on the Deez Lug Nutz podcast, here's one thing we want to do. You know, we want to talk about Franklin County Speedway every weekend. That is our home track. We want to get in at least a little bit of discussion about what's going on there. I can't make it up here every weekend like I'd like to, you know, for multiple reasons. For one, we've got the kids. And number two, with a podcast and things like that, we do kind of have a responsibility to show up at different racetracks. I think you all would agree with that.
And we have.
As much as I'd love to show up to Franklin County every weekend, we need to be going to Motor Mile for big races and South Boston and Ace and things like that. So
the reason we bring up the Madhouse this weekend, though, is the mess
so let's get to the Madhouse. I was back and forth between the Madhouse and SRX and with County Speedway, so I didn't get to watch it all. Let's talk about the Madhouse this weekend. I saw some highlights, some videos, and I saw quite a bit of destruction.
Well, we got to give highlight to Jeremy Gerstner getting his first win down there.
Yes, absolutely. The guy who drives for Hillbilly Racing, which we have a great relationship with here through Paul Hall and those guys. He races for Hillbilly Racing on the tour, but he has his own car for the stadium.
No, he's Tim Brown's teammate at the stadium. Okay. Then Julian corrected me on that earlier, too.
Well, I thought it was his team.
The cool thing is about Jeremy Gerstner, he comes every week, makes a 9-hour drive from Wesley Chapel, Florida, all the way to Bowman Gray Stadium, and then comes back.
Ain't that something?
That's an 18-hour round trip.
Did you know there's such thing as an airplane?
Well, he probably doesn't like the freaking birds either, like me. I don't get on no airplane. But
he looks like he's looking for some spots up here, though. I thought he might be moving up here. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he could be. But, I mean, Gerstner,
hopefully he will, because he's a great guy.
He's a great guy. I mean, we'd love to have a chance to talk to him, Jeremy, if you're listening. But his oh my God, I lost my train of thought. But his drive and determination to make that drive every week says a lot about himself.
And it pays off. It's a big deal getting
it pays off. And you know, he's a teammate to Tim Brown, who is currently tied for the points lead right now over in the modified division. That's no slouch of a race team. I mean, they work on his car here. He comes in, sets it up, drives, goes back to Florida. I mean, great story, though. And then, the showstopper, Chris Fleming, went back to victory lane in race 1.
And I'm happy for that because he's such a nice, he's a strange guy. He can be controversial at times, but you know what? I just kind of like the guy.
Yeah, Chris Fleming. I'm drawn to people like Chris Fleming. I mean,
he wears his emotions on his sleeve, but
he really does. He really does. But I mean, he's had a whale of a season. Last couple weeks, though, kind of got in some trouble on the racetrack, but it was good to see him park that thing back in victory lane in race 1 of the doubleheader for the modifieds over the weekend.
And his brother Frank Fleming is a racing legend. So,
well, the modifieds really wasn't the fireworks this weekend down there, though, were they?
No.
Hey, one quick thing. We know why Jeremy won, though. One of our former Appalachian Podcast guests shook his car down right before Jacqueline Drake went out there and turned some hot laps in and put the move on the car to win.
Oh, okay. So I saw something about that. I didn't realize she got in the car and turned some laps.
Yeah.
So she went out there and set the car up for him.
Well, I don't know if she really.
Pretty much. Well,
hey.
I mean,
you can't
if I'm Jacqueline Drake, that's what I'm going to say. I'll be like, hey, boys, I'm setting this car up for you now. She's going to have a long list of guys hitting her up, setting up the race car. Tim Brown's looking for points. I'm sure he needs any favors at Bowman Gray. I mean, he's a legend there, but I'm sure there's others.
Well, I'm surprised the Tower let him win, though. Going back to Paul Hall, how the hell did he pull that one off? I guess he's put his time in.
Well,
he led it from wire to wire.
He did.
Well, if we're talking about females jumping behind the wheel, I mean, the sportsman race this weekend, is that the one that...
God, no, yes, it was a sportsman. Oh, dear God.
It's always the sportsman. I mean, the modifieds make Bowman Gray, but the sportsman... Jeff,
So here we got to talk about Amber Lynn, and she is the most polarizing figure I've ever been across, even greater maybe than Kyle Busch and Dale Earnhardt.
Whoa, excuse me.
I said in polarizing
Bodine.
terms of polarizing. And now let me elaborate on this.
Please elaborate, because I'm about to come over this table right now.
We're talking about
you just
polarizing.
compared Amber Lynn to Kyle freaking Busch.
Or Rusty Wallace or Daryl Waltrip. We're talking about polarizing. I mean,
how is it? Me and Julian were at Bowman Gray Stadium, 15,000 people. They introduce Amber Lynn. They are absolutely cheering their asses off, rip the stadium apart. Then she wrecks and destroys her cars. What do? They cheer and rip the stadium apart again. How do you love it when love her and hate her at the same time? It is so bizarre. The same.
I'm not sure.
You've seen it with my own eyes.
There's no explanation there.
That's why I can't. I've never seen somebody quite that polarizing. Like, how do you go from that to that?
And look, that's like having your cake and eating it too, which I'm fat and I believe in that, but still. The fact of the matter is, I don't understand that.
I cannot understand that dynamic. I do not understand it. I've yet to figure that one out. I'm still working on it. Somebody can explain it. But anyways, so Amber Lynn is overheating, running mid-pack. And she was pushing water out, coming through 3 and 4. And a wreck happened in front of her. Caution comes out, but as soon as she gets by the wreck almost cleared, another car clips her and destroys her car. So she didn't really, she's headed to the pits. Who's the other guy here? We're talking Casey Kepley.
Somebody every week.
It is. Casey Kepley is the one that clips her after he spins out.
Well, they've had their incidents all year long.
This particular one was no fault of Amber Lynn, in all fairness, but. So Kepley spins out and slams into her and destroys her right front of her car and knocks the whole right front off of it, and she's dragging her around.
And then she finishes it off.
And then she definitely finishes off. So Kepley gets in front of her and stops on the backstretch, and she slams into him. She didn't have time to stop. She only has one brake on the front because the other's knocked off in turn 4. But so it happens. Well, then Kepley slams it into reverse and then backs up on the hood of Amber Lynn. Why, we still don't really know, but it happens. Well, then Amber Lynn goes psycho race car driver on Kepley and and does her best to destroy the back of his race car all the way midway down the back stretch, all the way into.
She destroyed that thing so bad she had to get the backup car to run race number 2.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she got the backup and did race number 2, and it was uneventful. She didn't hit anybody, but what we're not talking about, and Jeff, you brought this up today. That first Sportsman race is actually still under review.
It is still under review. It has not been officially.
Michael Adams won the race, but he's not getting credit for the win as of today. It is under official review.
I thought that. Okay, I'm sorry. You're right. I got them mixed up. I was thinking of the sport.
No, there was another event in the Sportsman race too. Looked like they were coming to the start, and whoever was in second place.
That was the street stock.
Street stock. Okay, dumped the guy. Went around, and the guy who got dumped drove through the infield and ran like T-boned and destroyed.
Well, it was just a spin. Neither car was even damaged, and they literally demolished the two of them under caution after that. Demolished, destroyed those race cars. Probably $20,000 worth of damage on those two cars. And
yeah, so you I mean, if you get on the internet and you look at some of the Bowman Gray groups or whatnot, half of them are saying that he ran into him and dumped him. Half of them are saying that he, slowed down on the restart on purpose.
And he probably did. He was. That's probably true. What happened, but that's racing. If you got to be able to put that damn thing in gear and get it going and turn forward, especially at Bowman Gray Stadium. Well, in my opinion, it's both of them's fault. I mean, however you want to shake it, but it was a racing deal, and it shouldn't have responded with two race cars being stored up.
It was a racing deal, and then Bowman Gray broke out.
It did.
Look, we all love Bowman Gray at this table, okay? Yeah. But Dean, you brought up an interesting point off camera that I'd like for you to touch on. Some of the racers from other tracks, they're not a big fan of Bowman Gray. Just because of the race cars that get tore up unnecessarily, I may add, in this angle.
That's
yeah. I mean, I was listening to Landon Huffman today, and he was on TikTok, and he was talking about there was no point in tearing up race cars. He said it ain't nothing but a circus down there. He said two totally good cars were barely tore up. There was hardly nothing wrong with them, and then the circus broke out.
Well, I'm going to say this, and it might not be the most popular opinion, and I'm probably going to catch hell for this. When I tune into Bowman Gray on Saturday evenings, I'm not doing it because I think the racing is that awesome. In fact, it's a lot of dumping runs.
It's a show.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I see better racing at Stafford or Five Flags or some of these other tracks I'm watching. Bowman Gray, it's good racing, but it's not, you know what I mean?
Well,
Does anybody know what I'm trying to say?
I know what you're trying to say.
Look, it's follow the leader, essentially, unless you dump the guy in front of you.
It's a fourth mile racetrack with one groove. That's the whole point.
I feel the same way 100% about the mods. I think the mods are not putting on as good a show at Bowman Gray as we want to think. And I think the street stock and I think the other classes are putting on one hell of a show. Me and Julian watched the stock fours there a couple weeks ago and was absolutely immersified in how good the race was.
Yeah, the race.
Hold on, immersified. Can somebody
spell it?
I just made that shit up. So
I don't even think the word exists.
Immersified.
I'm gonna look.
We were immersed in that damn race, and all three of them in the mods race, we were kind of. I mean, it's good racing, but no.
Jeff, I'm a little disappointed in you right now.
Why is that?
Because I teed you up really good when I made fun of you for saying that word. You should have come back and said, well, what idiot names his blog a Renaissance?
Well, no,
when it's aimed to people who can't even pronounce it, much less spell it. I had a hard time spelling it myself.
You just insulted your clientele. That's right.
I really did, and I'm sorry. Thank you for supporting my blog. I really appreciate that. I had to look up the spelling myself. So before I get hate mail and tweets and non-existent Facebook hate, I'm done. Sorry, I love you guys.
I'm done with this blog, Dean.
I'm sitting here wheel spinning. I got to get a hold to Amber Lynn and get her on the show.
Boom.
Yes, Amber Lynn needs to come on here and defend herself.
Immersive is a definition. There's no such word as immersify. But immersive is to plunge into something that surrounds or covers.
I just made it.
Is that akin to MRSA?
To dip into a fluid. So what fluids have y'all been dipping into is I got to ask my question. Engross, absorb, completely immersed in his work.
I'm going to go with immersed.
By immersion. Okay. So,
well, could it have been immersed?
Maybe immersified can be brought up in the Urban Dictionary as a new term for people who were enthralled in the zone at a racetrack, I guess.
All right. Well, fair point. Immersified, that's going to be an Urban Dictionary. I'm going to put the shit in there tonight. And it's going to be past tense of immersed. All right.
So, yes, I have.
Impressive, Jeff.
So, yeah, I mean, I still want to go down there. I think it's an awesome environment.
But you're right.
But it's if I want to go watch a mod race down there, it's at least got to be 100 lapper or 200 lapper.
Wait, time out. You've never been to the Madhouse?
No, he's never been to Madhouse.
What?
Yeah.
I'm shocked. That has to change.
We got to get that. We need to do that this year. Yeah. Billy can figure out a way to work it out.
Yeah, we got to get that figured out.
I know it's going
to be difficult with the 2 kids this year because I have, discussed things with my wife about the races I want to make. And the Modified to North Wilkesboro is one of those. So to make it down to Bowman Gray for a night, maybe not this year, but they'll be around next year. I'll definitely make it there.
Hey, Wilkesboro though, that may be a once in a lifetime deal.
So
who knows what the future brings?
So are we done with Bowman Gray for the weekend?
Pretty much. Want to give a shout out to Burt Myers on his hellacious comeback this year. What did I say? 58 points out of the lead.
Yeah,
I don't think he's
really
got enough.
Figured out something.
I don't think it's enough to come back and win the championship. But
realistically, no. I think Jason Myers has more.
Jason Myers was 18 points out of the lead. He was the points leader, and Tim Brown and who did I say he's tied to points with? Brian Law?
Brandon Ward.
Brandon Ward. They're tied for the points lead, and it's really going to be a tight race for the points at Bowman Gray. Coming in, it really will be, and trying to get down there for a points race finale this year might be worth maybe the last race if we can somehow.
Don't they have another twin 25 lapper? Because they're going to invert,
and that's going to be a big deal because it's a double points weekend. Essentially.
Yeah, we'll have to make one more trip to Bowman Gray. I was looking at my itinerary. That's a big word. I was looking at my itinerary, and I got a space for Bowman Gray. My calendar's filled up the next 2 weekends in July. Not going to say where at this point, at least for this weekend.
Confidential. You just don't want people hounding you for autographs when you go.
yeah, that's it. Like the one person that reads my blog is going to just come and say, "Hey, aren't you that guy?"
So, but anyways, I want to give a shout out to Burt Myers. He's a former podcast host.
Absolutely.
Guest, and want to give a shout out to him. And they really have figured out something down there,
which is going to be trouble for next year.
It is, and they're going to clawing their way back into it.
And for the smarts, I know it's different. The tour modifieds.
Well, getting him some rhythm is going to provide some momentum.
But it's got to. I know this could be a subject for another day, but the tour mods and the Bowman Gray mods. I know different setups, obviously different racetracks, but it's got to give them some sort of a help or advantage, like you said. The what's that word you just said?
Confidence.
Confidence. Yes. The thing I don't
momentum.
Have. Confidence. That's it.
So where was you going, Billy?
Well, I was going to say if we're done with Bowman Gray, and once again, we want to talk about Bowman Gray every weekend. And although I might think the racing has been a little lackluster this year, it doesn't mean I don't like what's going on down there. I don't like what the possibilities are.
Every time I've been to Bowman Gray, with the exception of the one time I went down there and it rained 15 minutes before the green flag.
Yeah.
Well, I think what Bowman Gray's got going for him is what NASCAR used to have going for him in the 70s and 80s and even up into the 90s. And that is, it doesn't matter what the racing is. There's going to be a packed house there, and it's going to be one hell of a party.
Fan connection to the drivers.
Exactly. There's going to be one hell of a party. So, yeah, and plus, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the fact that they just repaved Bowman Gray probably isn't affecting things here and there. So the racing might get back to the point to where, you might see a little bit different thing. But this year, for the most part, I got super excited about the Paul Hall race, and they just screwed him. They just screwed him. How are you going to throw a caution in the third turn when it's, you know what I mean? So, but that was probably my most exciting moment. But
they did that Saturday night too, because they were coming to the checkered flag and they said, "Oh, the race ain't over." I heard Dillner. Yeah. Oh, and shout out to Dillner on his hellacious coverage.
Well, that's another thing I was going to say is I enjoyed tuning in and hearing Dillner and Jacqueline Drake sometimes, and a couple of those people. Dillner's there pretty much every weekend, and it makes it a whole lot more interesting.
His excitement, it was almost like, you ever heard one of those Spanish
his
soccer games covered on TV?
His excitement for the chain race a couple weeks ago where the cops are running through the infield was the best.
That was tremendous. You know,
he was really like, we got cops running through the infield. I don't know if they've got enough breath to make it.
Dillner has been spectacular for Flo's coverage of Bowman Gray. It is a perfect fit. It's Emmy worthy. I'm telling y'all. So
let's jump into the rest of the short track racing here. That's kind of really tied things together with this show and a lot of things we're passionate about. So, the Cars Tour and the Smart Mods really have been at the front of our attention the past couple of years for, obvious reasons. For one, we have a great relationship with Chris Williams and the Smart Mods. In fact, I was just on the phone with Chris yesterday. All things go well. Hopefully, here in the next couple of weeks, we're gonna have a Paul Radford episode.
Oh yeah,
that's gonna be part of the Appalachian Podcast. And you want to talk about a legend? I mean, Paul Radford goes back. I mean, he was one of the guys that was running bootleg and racing cars. It goes way back. His stories. So I'm super, super excited about that. And the Smart Mods this year, hey, there's been a lot of parity in that as well.
They still got one race that hadn't finished.
There has been a lot of parity for the races that Money Matt hasn't showed up in. That being said, that was on the first half of the season. I've been thoroughly impressed. I thought the last race at
Caraway.
Oh my God! Okay, so that weekend, the Smart Mods go to Caraway. Maybe 28, 29 cars in the field. Maybe 9 at the end of the race are still running.
They didn't have enough left to finish the race.
And 4 days later, at South Boston, when you guys are down there, they just pretty much looked at the Smart Mods and said, "Well, hold my beer."
Yeah, and destroyed every car in the field.
So I want to talk. That's the race I want to talk about because you guys were down there. You guys had awesome access. I watched the race on Flow. It was phenomenal. Thoughts on South Boston late model?
Dean, you want to start?
I'll start off.
So how did what y'all were sending texts about being down there, and I told my wife, I said, I bet you they used the Appalachian Podcast to slide on into them sweets, and they did good for them for doing that.
So initially, I had bought sweet tickets. Then I got to thinking. I reached out to Jacqueline Drake, and I was like, hey, do you know anybody I can talk to about getting us down in the pits to do a little bit of stuff? Well, she sent me a guy's email, and so I reached out to him, but in the meantime, I had reached out to South Boston, actually the track itself, and they had given me the guy's name. So when we get to talking, he was like, hey, we oversold our sweet tickets. We'll refund you the money for the sweet tickets, and we'll give y'all media access for the weekend.
That's why they call him the Crumb Snatcher. That's right.
So I was like, okay.
There's nothing like him, guys.
I mean, we diddly-daddled around down there in the pits for a little bit before the race, and then we went back up and sat in the air conditioner and drank Pepsi and Mountain Dew and eat bologna burgers. But I told Julian, I said, before the late model stock race starts, I'm going back down in the pits. And he was like, all right, well, he didn't come with me. Well, my oldest one.
At least not yet.
Right, at that time. Well, me and the oldest one there, he was down there with me, and I said, I just feel like something's going to happen. We had just walked to the front stretch from out of turn 1 after Timothy Peters had kicked him out of sitting in their chair up under the Nelson Hauler, which that was funny. That was funny to start with. And here they come off the turn, and I have never heard and seen such a mess at one time. When we jumped over pit wall and got to where we could get, that one car was still sitting there. The damn thing was on fire. And people was trying to get out. I mean, it was only maybe 100 people down there that actually had the access to, to be down there. So it wasn't that many people. But, I mean, I've never seen a mess. I was sending y'all pictures. I mean, there was shit tore up that I ain't never seen in my life. I didn't know they could even tear it up as much as they did.
The one car, they stacked them up. The entire rear end housing was gone. Yeah. I mean, this was just absolute catastrophe of a crash. I mean, I've never seen anything like that in person. Like,
the big one at a short track.
The big one at a short track, and here I am. Like, I'm standing on top of the media center, watching this, I'm like, well, I need to get back. I need to get downstairs. So here I am going downstairs. But that was incredible. I mean, that was almost
as good as the end. I mean, when they come.
They went to the start finish line.
Corey Haim
and Jacob Boris. Boris is a regular at South Boston Speedway. And him and Corey Haim, for those of you who don't know, it's listening, probably do. Corey Haim drives for Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Camping World Truck Series, drives for Bill Venturini in the ARCA Series. He makes frequent starts in the late model series for Lee Pulliam Racing. And the fact of the matter is, him and Jacob Boris had a great battle at the end. They spun sideways. It was, just like Dale Earnhardt, Terry Labonte at Bristol with, Corey Haim's car totally destroyed in the front end and still got the winner's circle. But that was a great night of action. That was actually race 1 of the Virginia Triple Crown.
Well, that's exciting.
And to be able to cover that, I mean, I had to hide my excitement. I mean, I was excited, more excited than a kid at a candy store or me at a Chick-fil-A buffet. I mean, my God, I was so excited.
A Chick-fil-A buffet.
Has the Hampton Heat already been run for the second leg?
So the Hampton Heat is this Saturday.
Okay.
And they'll have 38 cars entered for that one. A lot of the same players entered: Peyton Sellers, Lane Riggs.
But Corey Haim's not coming back. I mean, he must have something going on this weekend. So
Corey Haim's running the truck race at Pocono.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where he'll be running. I'm pretty sure he's running the truck race at Las Vegas the weekend the Martinsville race is. Pretty sure. Don't quote me on that.
Well, let me tell you my big takeaway from that South Boston weekend. Me and Scott sat up here and watched most of the race. Actually, I kept it on that one over SRX that night because there was some great racing going on, back and forth. I don't think Caden Honeycutt wasn't in that race, was he? But no, McCartney was for the Nelson Motorsports guys.
Yeah, Caden's running a dirt race in Texas, which he got a job. Shout out to him. He's working for On Point Motorsports now.
You got a few truck races for the rest of the season.
He's actually an employee with the team.
Is that going to be a solid ride for him? I'm not sure how competitive that team is. Are we talking low tier or mid tier?
I know we're getting off subject a little bit, but On Point Motorsports, they're trying to get their footing together. Last year, Danny Bone. Of course, people may know him. He won the season opener of Bowman Gray this year in the modifieds.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to get their feet together. Brendan Poole's driven for that team in the past. Tate Fogelman actually started the year in that truck. And now it looks like Honeycutt's going to get 3 races at the end of the year. But the press release actually has him as an employee for the team.
Yeah, it does.
Which is very odd. You don't see that a lot nowadays.
Which means he's making his move back east. And he's a hell of a kid.
He's planning on that same press release. He's coming to North Carolina.
So did he not run points in a car store at South Boston?
No, that was not a car store.
Oh, it wasn't? No. Okay.
This was not a car
store That was the big
Okay.
South Boston 200
This
lapper.
was sanctioned by NASCAR for the big Virginia Triple Crown.
Okay, I got you.
Which will end
at Martinsville
Speedway for the
September
300.
24th.
We will be there for that one.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, we'll be there. And hopefully we'll have Barry and McCartney on Bobby McCartney on that one because he, for the bad day them guys had down there at South Boston, they still managed to come away with the top 10 at the end.
And why is that so important? Because the best driver with the best average finish of the 3 races collects a nice payday at the end.
That's pretty cool.
So they've done the Virginia Triple Crown now for maybe 12 years or something like that. Lee Pulliam's won it a bunch. Peyton Sellers won it. But no, I'm still giddy about that, guys. I'm not going to lie. That South Boston race, although Corey Haim, Big Tommy, shout out to Corey Haim. I called him at the wrong time. I wanted to interview him, and he was a little busy, so I'm not going to say he Big Tommy, but that was cool nonetheless. But I did do some interviews while I was there. I was like, well, may as well take advantage of this. I know Dean made fun of me a little bit, but he turns around and says, well, there's Jules talking to somebody on the freaking phone.
So after Dean's success at South Boston in that, I convinced Dean to start applying with NASCAR for media access.
I haven't heard back. I check my email every day.
We talked it all.
I even applied for pit passes for Darlington for the NASCAR race.
Hey, why not?
Or for media, whatever.
I told him, I said, hell, you had such good luck. I mean, I don't know. I was kind of joking in a way, but I was kind of serious. Hell, by the time I got, 30 minutes later, he said, all right, I submitted it. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, let me go back to my biggest takeaway that weekend. And just as a pure racing fan, as a big local racing fan, Kyle Dudley, that boy has been running good everywhere he goes here lately. He goes down to South Boston. He runs in the top 10 all night, kind of gets shuffled back to around at the back of the pack. And when the big one happens, he had got dumped a few laps earlier, and I was like, daggone it. He was running in the top 10, got dumped. And he actually was the only car at the very end of the field to not get
Well, it's probably a blessing that he got dumped when he did.
Because he would have been caught up in all of that.
He was way behind that incident.
He comes in down the front straightaway just slamming the brakes and missed everything, then snakes his way through the carnage and gets back out. Next thing you know, Kyle Dudley's in the top 10.
He does that. The Cars Tour at Callaway. He finished second.
I called that day. I said, you know what? He's my dark horse to win this race, even though we didn't get to stick around and watch it.
He's finished top 10 at Martinsville before.
So he may be a dark horse down there. And
I think he's absolutely a dark horse in the Valley Star race. I absolutely do.
Well, he's who I'm going to be rooting for.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
Me. I mean, one of them. There's a handful of people out there I'd want to see be successful because they've given us their time on these shows.
Absolutely.
And they've given us. So I will be rooting for all of them. But even though Kyle Dudley, he has agreed to come on one of these shows, we haven't got him on here yet. But as a local kid, hey, I got all the confidence in the world for him.
Dean, you talked to him at South Boston.
Yeah, I talked to him 2 different times at South Boston.
I spoke to him at Callaway. He's excited about being on. So, Kyle, if you're listening.
I've texted him a couple times, too. We've been in contact with him. I'm super impressed by that kid.
I had the kid moment because we could go out on the track while they were in the cars before they went out. So I went out there and stuck my head in the window of his car hollering at him before he went out on the track.
I'm sure that's what he wanted to see right before going out to a 200-lap race.
Absolutely.
Was Dean sticking his head to the window?
Hat in there with Marcus.
Hey, can you just sign this? Hey.
Well, it worked out. It worked out.
Yeah, that did work. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, we was messing with Bobby McCarty right before he went out.
But, the whole point is like Kyle Dudley. I know he'll probably listen, catch this. We appreciate all you do for local racing. Look forward to talking to you on here among some of our other surprises we may have in store going forward. I'm just going to stop right there.
So, anything else y'all got on local racing, short tracks? Because we're getting to the 2-hour mark and we still got some.
Yeah, we're about an hour and 30 minutes.
Well, I mean, y'all talked about the Cars Tour. So the next big Cars Tour event is the Hickory Throwback 276. That race will be July 31st at Hickory Motor Speedway. It's the last Saturday of the month.
Well, I got a feeling that's on Julian's schedule. Oh, I didn't let him out. The damn fans will enamor him.
Yeah. Well, that is on the itinerary because I've already been to Hickory once this year, and I will be back again to cover that race.
Well, one way or the other. We would be remiss if we didn't spend a couple of minutes talking about the resurgence of North Wilkesboro Speedway and what's coming up here. I know we touched on it from one of our previous podcasts, but I'm planning on making my way down to see that.
I definitely want to go Tuesday.
Race. Yeah, I want to be there for the first one. I might not make it for both.
There is so much going on, and so from what the guy Barry is leasing it. What was the company's name? You said it. It didn't matter.
Oh, you would put me on the spot.
It don't matter. But they leased it to a guy named Barry, and it's with some that's who's actually doing it all.
The one who's promoting is Race XR.
Yes. There you go.
Is promoting
there you
go.
Race. So
it's not technically a Smart Mod sanctioned event.
It's not.
Although the majority of the field are going to be your Smart Mod drivers, and I'll bet they'll probably have the Smart Mod and Pace-O-Matic logos.
It's also using Smart Mod's allotment of tires from Hoosier. It's one of those I seem like 13 races or whatever.
It's a really weird deal.
It is a weird deal. And a lot of people don't know what's going on here in the background. There's actually Musco Lighting is actually bringing in lighting for the track, temporary lighting, much like they did at Martinsville. They're tearing down the backstretch seats to put in camping style seats like they have at Martinsville. I mean, spots. And also, what's interesting, and everybody knows this if you've ever been in North Wilkesboro, seen it on TV, you go uphill on the backstretch and downhill on the front stretch. Well, my brother-in-law's girlfriend, her dad has actually been working down at North Wilkesboro Speedway burying pipe. And what they're doing is they got a drainage issue. So they're saying
he's been laying pipe.
He's been laying pipe at Morris Wilkesboro.
Zinger.
So anyway, they had to. He said when it rained, it would literally fill up turn 1 and 2 full of water. You know, it'd be nothing. Turn 3 and 4 would be dry. So they've had to dig a lot of pipe, and they've done a lot. They also tore down the suites in turn 1, Julian, entering turn 1.
Yes. So
I think they were the only ones that were not.
Yeah, they weren't
inhabitable.
In great shape, so they had to.
They were a safety issue.
They had to tear that.
They couldn't even have people walking under them.
No,
They were
it was
such
a
bad shape.
It was
The
definitely a
engineers
safety
said,
hazard. But I love what they're planning to do with the backstretch.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because that's what South Boston did. South Boston just made that a camping area. Pull your truck up to the back and just have at it. I think that's going to be great. And I'm telling you, you know, the first part of August is when the modifieds are coming, the smart mods. Cars Tour will be there at the end of the month. I'm telling you, if you can listen to my voice, I don't want to hear any excuses. If you love racing, you need to go to North Wilkesboro. You need to support this because I don't want to hear it where, I wish North Wilkesboro was around. North Wilkesboro's around. It's sat dormant for almost 20 years. It's time for y'all to support these races. I know we're planning on it. One way or the other, I'll be at the Cars Tour event, and the modifieds, I'll be there too.
Yeah, I think I'm going to at least make it down for the first night of modifieds, and I want to make it down for one of the nights when the Cars Tours are there. And I want to make it down one night when they turn it into dirt and the dirt late models run too. So that'll be in October. So I'm going to plan on 3 times.
The Pied Piper is officially entered in the Cars Tour race at North Wilkesboro.
Dale Jr.?
Yeah.
Dale Jr.
He's on the official list. He is entered. He is the Pied Piper will be running in the late model race.
Well, I mean, how could he not?
Oh, he's got to put his money where his mouth is.
How could he not?
He's the one who did it.
Exactly. I mean,
this shit wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for
Dale
him.
Jr., so he needs to be good.
None of this would be happening without Dale Jr. He is single-handedly run his mouth so much to the right people that he's bringing back racing to North Wilkesboro. And for that matter, he's got a big hand in bringing cup racing back to Nashville Super Speedway. I don't want to get a sidetrack there, but not Nashville Super Speedway.
Nashville Fairgrounds. Which, hey, the SRX race was great a couple weeks ago.
His involvement with iRacing surely has helped, but I think at the end of the day, we may want to give Marcus Smith a kudo or two.
Oh, there's no doubt that Marcus
Smith has led the charge for this.
I think in terms of promoting it, as far as ideas, spinning it, Dale Jr. has been the
promotion,
forefront.
yes, but it ain't happening without sanction.
It ain't happening. Money. No, Marcus Smith.
I don't see Dale Jr. putting money out for this.
Well, Dale Jr. got the excitement going to the point to where Smith was like, okay, well, maybe.
I think Marcus knew that he's like,
Marcus Smith's no dummy.
No, he's a smart businessman. He's a good dude. So, yes, I feel bad taking credit away from him. I think Junior had the idea. Marcus had the ability to put the ideas on paper and make them happen.
It's out there for everybody to hear. To see.
And
it's great.
And it's going to happen. And Dale Jr. is heavily involved in it.
And y'all got to support it. Again,
we'll be there. Find us. I know I texted Steve Post this weekend, asking was he going to be down there. He's going to be down there for the modifieds in early August. Go down there, hang out. I'm sure Dylan's going to be down there, JB, Chris Williams, all of our local buddies, all of the guys that have been on the show. Us, come hang out. We'll have a good time. We'll figure something out. Before we get out of here, and of course this is the Swapcast, so part of our segment on Deez Lug Nutz when we start finally getting this thing going
is let's get fired up.
Yeah, we're going to get fired up about something. So we're going to go around the table
an air gun, by the way,
and talk about something, and maybe it's something big overall for years, maybe it's something this past weekend, but what is something about racing that gets you fired up? We're going to start with boating.
Ooh, he throws it to me.
I thought Julian had a cat in his pocket for a second.
This is a tough one because I've had the different angles to come from, but after I had a thing listed, but I'm thinking because I listened to the Tony Uri Jr. podcast today, one thing that's got me fired up is I think a lot of things are coming back from the old DEI days that we didn't really know. It's kind of put a fire into my brain even more because I want to hear from Teresa Earnhardt so bad. And I know that I may never do it. I'm not talking about on this podcast, but I mean a public statement.
That'd
Tony,
be something we heard on this podcast.
Well, Tony Erie
goodness.
Jr., made a great point. He was talking about Teresa and all that she went through, and he said, that woman took a lot of hate over the years because of how things went down. But can you put yourself in her shoes when she just lost her husband and all the company falls right on her shoulders? How do you... So we have a lot of hate for her, and I wonder, is it misplaced?
Well,
But
a lot of it she brought on to herself.
A lot of it she brought onto herself.
But to counter your point, I think unless you're in that situation,
You can't really... We're not fair to
you
judge
don't really
her.
know. I mean, yeah, we hear what Kelly and Dale Jr. say all the time, but it's hard to really point fingers unless you've actually been through that situation.
Do you and what? Here's a good example of how Teresa was, and you listen to her. This was the good side of Teresa. Do you remember when Michael Waltrip and Dale Jr. wrecked in the 600, destroyed the race cars? Jr. run over Michael Waltrip.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, see, Tony Erie Jr. was a crew chief for that car. Well, Pops was the competition director. So they said that after the race, the Napa guys were absolutely furious at Dale Jr. And rightfully so, because he wrecked the race car. And they're the redheaded stepchild of the organization anyways. So they said when they got down there in the pits and everybody's loading up, everybody's arguing and fussing, and, Tony Jr.'s like, all right, guys, let's just go. Well, Tony Sr. was literally out there in front of the media just going off on Dale Jr., like throwing him under the bus, all kinds of stuff. And then he said finally they got everybody settled down and they went on back. And Monday morning, Tony Jr. and Tony Sr. were in the shop. Teresa walks up. And you don't know, they said you never know what time Teresa would be there. They call it Teresa Standard Time because she says she's going to be there at 9. She may be there at 1 in the afternoon. They said that Teresa walks up to Tony Jr. and says, "Hey, Tony, can you get me a piece of duct tape?" He says, "Sure, what color do you want?" She says, "It don't matter. Just get me a piece of duct tape." And he says, "How big does it need to be?" And she said, "Well, about like this." And he goes back, rips it off, and gives it to her. She takes it and turns around and puts it right over Tony Sr.'s mouth.
Oh, my goodness.
He says, from now on, don't talk to the media. So that got me fired up today, and it's resurgence. I want to hear from Teresa Earnhardt. I got.
You have been talking about this all week.
I
What is
have.
the likelihood of that happening?
Oh, shocker.
I want
What
to
is
hear
the
from
likelihood of
her.
it happening?
I would love to.
I agree. I would
I
love to.
think it'll
too.
happen. I think it'll
I
happen.
do too.
one day.
I think that maybe there's some kindle.
Because it just comes to a point where
It has to happen. Why can they
at
leave
some
with-
point you just need to bury the hatchet, because the one thing that is a thief of joy is living in the past, holding on to grudges. I mean, it is a thief of joy.
And I'm sure-
I get it. I think we've all in this room had some type of grudge towards somebody, and when you look back on it, especially maybe a good friend or family member, but is it worth it in the end? I heard a good friend actually make a speech about this recently, and it really got me thinking. It's like, don't waste your time on this earth, like holding grudges when you could just go up to somebody you hadn't talked to in a while, call them up, say, "Hey, how you been? This was really stupid to get, to be mad at. Let's just call bygones be bygones."
It's interesting because Dale Jr. said, they were talking about the contract, and he said, Tony Jr. says, "You only wanted 51% of the company. As that's all it would have took to keep you there. Would you still be there?" And he said, "Yeah. If I would have got 51% of the company, I would have stayed there, and DEI would still be a thing, presumably." And Junior Funny switched the damn thing up, and he went on. He said, what Tony Jr. said, "I just didn't think you had enough money to do it. I didn't think you had enough ass in the wagon," I think's what he said, to be able to purchase 51% of the team. Well, Dale Jr. flips around and he said, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about buying it." He says, "I expected her to give me 51% of the team." So I thought that it got me fired up there.
But I tell you what, though, the way things panned out, though, Of course, you didn't want to see what happened in 2001 go down the way they did. I think the racing world and I think NASCAR is totally, completely different. I don't think it completely falls off the map the way it did for a while if you don't have that tragic day in 2001. That being said, silver linings, whatever path Dale Earnhardt Jr. took to get to where he's at now,
he's done good.
He has been a massive influence in this resurgence of short track racing. He has been a masterful voice for all of it. And the impact he had, does he have the same impact if that day doesn't happen and he keeps driving for DEI and he has a masterful career and he ends up being like a Jimmy Johnson or a Jeff Gordon? I mean, does he fall back and start doing something like the podcast to where he shares these stories? I mean, who knows?
You don't know.
Who knows? So
I feel like we can finally bury Dale Earnhardt if we ever get the word, if we finally hear from Teresa.
Maybe.
I feel like we have, as racing world has never buried him. That is something
I have wanted to bring up to either him or Dillner at some point in time. We get him on the show, and that's for another podcast. So, Dean, what are you fired up about?
Well, I got one more off of that. I still think Ty Norris was the biggest asset to DEI.
He was. If he
because
yes.
of why I say that. I didn't realize till yesterday he's got a big hand in the track house.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize.
Technical director or something.
There you go.
Ty Norris is 3 for 3. Every organization he's been, he's automatically turned him to a winner. Michael Waltrip Racing was the last one.
You just segued and you didn't even know it.
Yeah.
But we'll get you fired up.
Yeah. Well, I've got one thing. My poor boy, Kevin Harvick. Unless he wins, he's going to be screwed to the end. Because I read a thing today. He's 8th. He would be like 8th in points. And here he is. Can't win. He's been running up front. I mean, yesterday, I don't know what in the world they were thinking and doing with, back and forth, but it's a damn shame. The man would be 8th in points, but if he don't win a race, he's gonna be sitting,
Yes, but on the other hand, if this was 25 years ago and he was 8th in points at this point in time, he probably still wouldn't have a chance of winning the title.
That's true too. But
you know what I mean? If you're 8th in this point in time, Dale Senior's 1,000 points in front of him.
If it was 2004, he'd be in the chase for the Nextel Cup.
Right. Well, somebody said today, why don't we extend it to 20 cars, not 16?
Oh, absolutely not. That's not my subject.
I think it's
we don't
too
need
many.
To expend more.
I think it's too many as it is, but Dean's got a good point on that because the point system used to reward you for every race of the year. Now it seems to reward you for one race.
And I'm going to say it now. We will have 16 winners.
I think we will too.
I think you're right, and I think we may have 17.
Yeah, then
I think for sure we're having 16.
I don't know. I think we're seeing something that's not been seen.
There's one driver that's out there that's going to win, and it's coming very imminently.
Blaney.
Blaney's going to win one of these races.
Well, he's been
runs
struggling.
Too good. Didn't run great yesterday.
But honestly, if I look back on teams, the most improved team over last year, this year, counting Trackhouse out because they've been on a whirlwind. Is Trackhouse new? Is it old? I honestly think Kevin Harvick may be the most improved team this year over starting in Daytona to now. They've really come a long ways, and it Dean's right. It will kind of suck
These
for
weird
them.
winners that we've had this year
have screwed him.
Overshadowing that.
How about
he'd
this?
be safely in the points.
How about this? Truex wins at Pocono this weekend.
That could happen.
He's
won there before.
I can see that.
Ryan Blaney's won there.
There we
flat
go.
Tracks.
Well, I think it's going to be a redemption weekend. I think he had the best car at New Hampshire.
Redemption weekend. That sounds familiar.
And here we go again. I was thinking about it today. He had the best car. He's going to go to probably one of his better tracks.
Yep.
Go ahead and book it.
Well,
so you're saying go ahead and fire the old wager up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Put it on Truex.
Uh-oh.
All right, well.
Julian, what gets you fired up?
Gosh.
I took Billy's word there.
I've almost...
You're good.
So,
that's what we need.
I knew what I was going to talk about. But Dean brought up a really good point.
Oh, no.
And I almost want to change it.
When a Crumb Snatcher brings up a good point, you want to change it.
We can leave
I almost wanted to change it. But I'm not. I'm going to go with the subject anyway that I came ready to talk about. Why in the world, if you are NBC and you have scheduled both the Cup race at New Hampshire and the freaking IndyCar race at Toronto at the same time, That makes no sense to me whatsoever. If you're trying to build your racing audience, why are you starting those two races at the same time? That's splitting your audience right there. Now, before you say, well, Jules, more people watch NASCAR. No kidding. The ratings show that every week.
Doesn't really matter. You're still splitting the racing audience
You're splitting the racing audience for no reason. And, oh, by the way, you can't watch the IndyCar race unless you're watching on freaking Peacock. I've got a problem with that.
You got something against birds?
No, I love birds, okay?
He's a birdist. He's a
I'm
birdist.
definitely a bird enthusiast. Chicken breast, that's a bird.
Well,
Chicken wings?
Chicken wings, that's a bird.
Chick-fil-A?
Buffalo wings.
So
Chick-fil-A's got birds, right?
But yes, you're daggone right they do.
Did
But
Toronto
I'm
have
fired.
lights?
No, they don't run lights. It is a street course.
Yeah, so it would have had to have been drop the green flag in New Hampshire at 1 and then...
Oh, what a concept to
Yeah.
run an East Coast race at 1 o'clock
I
in the
know, right?
afternoon.
I agree with you totally. And the TV, and people think, well, NASCAR and the track schedule it. No, the TV deal has way
it's
more
all
to
TV.
TV
It's
has
all
everything
TV.
to
I'm
do with it.
surprised
You're
television
right.
hasn't dictated this podcast yet. That's why we're here, so TV.
So
If they pay us enough money, they can
Hey,
dictate
you
all day
daggone
long.
right.
Yeah.
So-
I'll wear a freaking moo-moo on a podcast. You pay me enough, NBC.
If Chris Williams is listening to this, he's probably opening up that damn file drawer and he's saying, well, I can tell you one about this. And he probably has a reason why they done it. Great point, though. I know
why they did it. I know why they did it, because they want to expand Peacock. And I get that. I get why they did it. And I also understand why this was done in the first place, because the Open Championship, that took predecessor on NBC. Okay, I understand that. The last ball was hit right around 3 o'clock. Okay, so at this point, instead of having this compete with one another, you could have had a great day of auto racing. Tune in at 12 o'clock to see the Grand Prix of Toronto, whatever that race was called for the Indy. And then 3 o'clock, you're running New Hampshire. Or heck, start the IndyCar race at 5 o'clock in Toronto. Okay, you're going to have less chance of rain at Toronto than you are going to have in New Hampshire. So please don't attack me, weather nerds. I get that. It's just... To me, it's like, and I know this is a traditional weekend in Toronto. They've always had this race this time of year. They haven't had it the last 2 years because of COVID. But to me, I just think it isn't a good idea.
But it hurts their viewership, because their viewership may watch both but would rather watch the Cup race. So they could have had both.
I'm one of those guys. I'm going to watch... I love IndyCar racing. I know it's not that popular.
I like it. I like it, but don't love it.
The Indy 500, I was all on the Indy 500.
I would love to see that.
I loved it.
I'd love to see him in Richmond.
You have so many opportunities. I mean, it could have been on CNBC.
You're thinking a Memorial Day weekend type deal, Indy 500.
Yes. Yeah. Something should have been at 1 o'clock. There's no reason why they couldn't have run that, because auto racing fans, they ain't watching golf. Well, I mean, I watch golf, but I watch everything. I don't have a life. But the point of the fact of the matter is, I just think that could have been done a little bit differently. And, I know this weekend they're having the doubleheader at Iowa. They're running Saturday and they're running Sunday, and it's not competing against the Cup race. So I just think we only have 18 dates a year. Why are you going to run it with IndyCar? But I'm sure they don't really think about the other. It's just... To me, it's just, I wanted to watch both, and I didn't want to watch one on freaking Peacock. But if you're listening, we will do the show on Peacock. We will absolutely do this show on Peacock. Okay, I love birds. I'll flap like a peacock if that's what I got to do.
We'll get Julian in a peacock costume.
I will, look, if it'll get me media credentials or somewhere, I will wear a peacock outfit to freaking Martinsville. I will do it. I have no shame whatsoever. I will do it.
The vision in my head just about killed me right there.
So, you're out there, NBC. Hey,
Julian bebopping around in a peacock costume.
We have to get Ryan to lead him around.
Yeah, we'll get Ryan to just help him point in the right direction so he doesn't trip over shit.
Are you suggesting Ryan puts... Never mind.
Anyways, Billy, what you got on the fired up list?
I tell you right now, it's going to get me fired up. And it's going to be controversial, probably for anybody listening and probably for everybody sitting around this table right now, but I am fired up for Ross Chastain. I like his intensity.
Yes.
I like the fact that he goes out there and races. He has caught so much hell for the way he is driven. That is exactly what we need.
But
NASCAR.
It's got us watching, doesn't it?
I like what the boy is doing. I like the fact that he is competitive every week. He is one of the big reasons that the next gen car has got such ringing endorsement from me. And everybody wants to, and I have so much of it. I said, well, the way he's driving this and this, hey, he is winning. He is winning. So what are we irritated about? Why the controversy? Somebody fill me in here.
Because
I'm fired up about Ross Chastain.
He's running into drivers that have run into other drivers before.
I guess there's a way to say that probably they're just pissed off because he's beating them.
That's Bodine. You hit it. You hit it right on the head. Ross Chastain has come out of literally nowhere and started beating these people that were usually lapping him before.
And he's made. Well, I mean, and he has made some mistakes. Realistically, though, the mistake last week, Denny Hamlin, that was a driving error. What he did at Gateway, he just made a mistake because he was driving hard. I mean, you can't hate him for driving hard. Billy's right. I mean,
well, I think Bodie, in our
right.
chats before, maybe even on the show, you have alluded to a fantastic point about Ross Chastain, about he is used to driving in less stellar equipment, and now he is driving. And go ahead and allude on that. He's driving in.
He did. He's come from crap. I mean, and I hate to be honest. Like, was it JD Motorsports? I think we talked about it.
He drove for Johnny Davis.
He drove for Johnny Davis and starting park equipment.
You're talking about cars that were years old, probably chassis 10 years old.
Yeah.
And not to take your thunder by any means, but this guy has had to overdrive his equipment to get the best out of what it was. I mean,
and now the playing field has been leveled out.
Yeah, he's in great equipment now, so he doesn't have to do that.
And he's got sport too.
I mean,
but he's still driving like that.
He drove before he got in those niche trucks. Those niche trucks were 15th to 20th place trucks. He goes in there. Yes, they had the GMS alignment, but he's still winning that truck and won a bunch of races. So, I mean, even the college stuff. I mean, he did well in the college stuff. I mean, I think that's what it is. I mean, I really hadn't thought about it. He's beating these guys, and these guys are so used to beating him and being in control that they don't like it.
I ain't gonna say that Alex Bowman didn't have some of that. I think he would have if Alex Bowman hadn't been taken over for Junior in the situation he did, because Alex was in the same position.
Yeah, Alex and Ross Chastain are a lot alike than what you really think. I mean, they've had
as far as what they've come from in their careers, racing
both
careers.
guys should have been done.
Yeah.
I mean, Alex Bowman was fired over Twitter.
Literally.
He found out on Twitter he was being fired by Tommy Baldwin. Then Ross Chastain lost his Xfinity ride when DC Solar went belly. Well, they didn't go belly up.
It was some sort of
it was a Ponzi
embezzling.
scheme.
Okay, a Ponzi scheme.
DC Solar was a Ponzi scheme.
And they had enough damn sense to be able to, or ability to be able to put themselves on a race car. That was pretty slick.
Yeah. So
they were a big sponsor,
too. They were. FBI shut them down. I mean, and they still owe a lot of people some money, apparently, but that's neither here nor there.
The hell with the FBI.
But I feel bad. I felt bad for him in that situation because he was really doing good. Those cars were running up front.
My deal about Ross Chastain is he's, I will say this. He reminds me of what Dale Earnhardt used to do and what Rusty Wallace would do. But the difference is, I'm not comparing the styles. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is Dale Earnhardt didn't care about running into you. Because guess what? If you confronted him, Dale Earnhardt would probably whip your tail.
Or he'd put his arm around you and go talk about it somewhere.
Yeah.
But like Dale Rick Mass, just bend over and say, all right, kick it. I know you want to. But I know you want
Ross Chastain, I mean, I've met Ross Chastain, got to talk to him at Martinsville before. I mean, he's not that big of a fella. He's a little fella. So he's not very intimidating.
Yeah, and I mean, I give you a hard time about Ross, but just because.
Yeah, you should. I mean, I'm used to it.
I'm with Billy. I like it. I mean, I'm a big Kevin Harvick fan, and you know what I was looking at the other night? Ross Chastain hats.
Yeah, I have to. I have to. Me and him both. I wanted to go get a Chastain hat that day we went to Junior Motorsports.
I'm thinking, this watermelon fool has got my vote all day long.
Because we want to see it. I don't want him to change.
I was a Tony Stewart fan, into a Kyle Busch fan, JGR Motorsports. That, of course, Bill Elliott, Bobby Labonte, Tony Stewart, Kyle Busch has been my and Tony Stewart and Kyle Busch. They race Chastain races like, hey, he's out there to win. He ain't out there to make friends. And if he makes a mistake, so be it. But hey, how many people are going to tune in to the last 10 races to see if he's running in the top 8 or top 4 and Hamlin ends up dumping him?
Hey, look, if you want friends, go get a dog.
Yeah. So let me make one point about Ross. And this is where I think my only problem with Ross would be. His ferociousness driving the car and aggressiveness is going to hinder him, though. If he doesn't pull it back, we remember Cole Trickle in Days of Thunder. Him overdriving and racing it so aggressively was his downfall.
Ernie Irvan ring a bell?
Yes, Ernie Irvan ended up apologizing to the entire NASCAR garage. Ernie apologizes. He gets in, a little bit of respect built up with his self. He's able to take that aggressiveness and use it at the right times. It seems like Ross is being aggressive on lap 5 instead of being it on lap 500 or 400, So maybe we want the same Ross, but maybe he needs to change to a different Ross at the right time.
Maybe he needs to scale it back just a little bit.
Or
I love the way he drives.
Reorganize the way he does.
I'm fine with Ross.
I love it.
Well, yeah, but I don't want him to lose because of it. It's what I'm saying. I don't want him to destroy the car.
So, hey,
well, I mean, Atlanta's a good point.
And huge props, too, for Suarez for getting his first ever win. As well. I mean, that team.
My amigos.
Suarez.
He's my amigos.
I mean...
Amigos?
For me, it's hard. I've always been a JGR fan because I was always a Redskins fan.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm no longer a Washington football fan. That's a whole nother show. Julian, we can talk about that later. But that being said, always Joe Gibbs. I always liked Bobby Labonte. Always rooted for whoever came to that team and stuck around. Got to be a huge Kyle Busch fan. Chastain is probably the first person I found myself rooting for outside the JGR bubble in my entire life since Bill Elliott. So, I root for Chase too. God, it kills me to root for Hendrick. But I root for Chase Elliott.
Come on to the dark side. It's okay.
I root for Chase Elliott. The rest of them hacks, Byron Larson, I'm not rooting for them.
First of all,
but
Chastain called William Byron a hack.
I'm just quoting Ryan Forbes.
I do, but let me make on the record, I do like Chastain. I like the way he's driving. I just don't want him to hinder himself. I don't want him to be his own worst enemy. I just want to go on the record saying that.
But I don't think he cares.
I don't think he does either. I don't know.
He's a watermelon farmer. He just goes and does his watermelon business. And it ain't gonna matter when he's smashing a watermelon in Phoenix.
I guess that's a good point. I mean, if he finishes the race or he don't, he's happy. It's either he brings back the trophy or the steering wheel. I guess that's his mentality.
Ross Chastain he's in a very interesting position because he's got nothing to lose.
He's
not supposed to be in this position.
He's not, and it's almost like he doesn't give a damn.
So
what if he does?
What if he does lose? He'll be watermelon farmer. That's what he wants to do.
Yeah, and a well-to-do family.
This is a bonus to him.
And he's playing with house money.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's probably pretty well off. I mean, family-wise.
Who can't pull for a man who eats damn watermelon off of a racetrack?
Right.
I mean, think of what's all on the racetrack.
He's like all shucks. Ryan makes fun of him all the time, but he does have this all shucks mentality. Like,
yeah, he is. I mean, Ross has got an odd personality. But it's not off-putting. But
hey, a lot of winners are odd. I mean,
it's coming from Ryan.
Is odd.
Yeah, and it's coming from Ryan.
Well, we got to get Ryan on the show.
We will. We definitely will.
What else y'all got?
And that's what gets me fired up. We're going to go ahead and, like I said, this show, the Deez Lug Nutz podcast, when we do these, hopefully we can get some in here in the studio. I would love that. Maybe in the wintertime here and there, if we can get somebody to come up and maybe do a little bit more of a long form kind of thing. Do a lot of them on Zoom for the future. But for this show to be kind of a Swapcast, we've been about 2 hours and 10 minutes. That's roughly around the normal. So before we get out of here, we'll do final thoughts. And I don't really know what this is going to entail. Like I said, we're just kind of hoofing it from here. But Dean, we'll start off with you for final thoughts. And in from there.
Final thoughts. Let me think here.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, no. I'm just trying to think. I was sitting here earlier just trying to think of the next race that I will be able to go to, and it'd probably be Ace for the Cars Tour. Yeah. So
when is that date?
It's August the 12th. It's that Friday night race that we didn't get to go to.
You ain't going to make it down to North Wilkesboro for the mods?
I don't know yet. I don't know. That's during the middle of the week. I got to figure out
for the rain.
Right, the one that we got rained out for. So we've still got access to all that stuff for
I'm shocked
Ace.
any racetrack lets me go near it for like 3 straight weeks.
Right.
Yeah, Julian ruined our Cars Tour race at Callaway.
Yeah,
so.
sure did.
Well, but
go ahead,
I'm going to try North Wilkesboro. I mean, it's during the week, and we're going to see. I mean, I like to go down there and probably go to both nights, but we got to work out the logistics of that mess. But besides that, I mean, just excited to keep doing this every week, every other week, however we do it. And I think I've got maybe 10 or 15 people I've talked to in the last month and a half to, hey, we'll do it.
Hey, drop a couple of those names right now just so people will tune in. I mean, I know you all have talked to Kyle Dudley and Mike
I've talked
Looney.
to Kyle. Let me
Peyton Sellers.
I've talked to Peyton. I've talked to
that'd be a phenomenal show right there.
We talked to Bobby McCarty. We've talked to Austin Thaxton, Jarrett Fryer. We talked to Corey Heim when we were down at the track, and he was like, "Hey,
Quentin Hoof, didn't y'all speak with him?
Yeah, we talked to Quinn Huff.
I want to get him on as a Huff or Hoof.
I don't know.
I think it's
Huff.
Houff.
Yeah.
I want to talk to him about trucking because that's where I'm pretty sure he goes. Because Hoof Trucking or Houff Trucking, however you want to pronounce it, they're huge.
Come think of it, it's Houff.
They have a huge operation in Wires Cave, Virginia, where he's from, and they actually got some stuff going on in Lynchburg.
My biggest one that I talked to at South Boston was Derek Thorne. I want to try to get Derek Thorne on.
And me and him have a connection. Me and Derek drove for Jimmy one,
but he's running all that West Coast ARCA stuff.
Yeah,
he's doing all that different stuff. And
there's a lot of folks where, like that South Boston race. I know I keep repeating that, but we were able to make some really good connections.
We talked to Lane Riggs,
and ultimately, it's not to make us look good. It's really to spread the news of racing and getting some of these guys some recognition. Like I talked to Mason Diaz, Landon Pimbleton, Carter Langley, some other guys at the track, Lane Riggs.
We want people to show up and support these people on Saturday nights. Like, as Julian has mentioned, time and time again, there's a renaissance going on for short track racing, and I want people to go out and enjoy it. I want people to support these places. So we have places to go on Saturday, and you'll get a show. You're really, really supporting local. These local guys, a lot of these guys are the ones who are going out there and they're doing your electrical work during the week, your body work during the week. They're doing HVAC work. Whatever they're doing, they are blue-collar guys. And on Saturday nights, they show up to the track. Hey.
It's good to make the connections, but the connections from me have turned more into almost being these people's friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And getting to know who they are and just not,
Absolutely.
my God, they race a race car. I mean, yeah. I mean, the average fan's like what did I tell Lane Riggs? I said, damn, between him and Peyton Sellers, they look like Dale Earnhardt and Harry Gant down here. And Lane said, well, which one am I? And I said, I don't know. I don't know which one to tell you.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
they really respond well to that stuff. I mean,
right. I mean, like I told Corey Heim standing down there talking to him, I said, dude, you don't understand how it is for Corey Heim to come to South Boston and run a late model stock race.
Right.
I said, you don't understand how much more people draw. I mean, good God Almighty. Me and Julian talked about it. I won't swear that they didn't have more people at the late model race than they did at the SRX race.
Put a wager on it. They most definitely did.
But
I'm convinced.
I mean, just to that point.
No knock on SRX by any means. That's not what we're doing here.
Right.
But that late model race did attract the people, and that's ultimately what my final thought is just this is a dream of mine. This is a dream of mine to be doing, and I'm quite humbled to be sitting here in this seat. I know I've said that before, but this is an absolute dream of mine, and I just want to do the sport justice. When it comes down to it, I don't care about being famous. I just want to promote the sport
and have fun doing it. Because this is able
I'm having a fun doing it, and if people recognize me, that's great. But I want people to say, that Jules fella, he's honest. He asked me good questions, and I could tell him stuff, and he's not gonna, go repeat it and whatnot. So, like I said, dream of mine. Yeah.
I'm just trying to do it without getting any protective orders.
Well,
Boating.
Final thoughts. I done exploded the internet saying that Amber Lynn may be more polarizing than Dale Earnhardt and Kyle Busch.
yeah, I can't with you.
No, I really don't.
Can't with you.
Can't. I mean, it was obviously being.
It was tongue in cheek, but
it's interesting the way the dynamic.
It's an interesting argument. I mean, when you put it down to scale, I guess.
Oh, if you put it down to scale, yeah. It is. It's bizarre. You have to scale it down, and it was interesting to look at because I've never seen anything particularly like that. So, and I'm also going to throw out there, we didn't get to touch on this, but I think Kyle Busch is a free agent soon.
Yeah, I mean, that's the type of material everybody needs to tune in to every time you listen to the show, because that was one of our topics and we didn't even touch on it.
We didn't.
So it just goes to show you, hey, we got more shows like this coming up.
I really do believe there's something in the mix there, and I think they may have been close to a deal, but I think Tyler Reddick doing what he did may have put everything in jeopardy, and there may be some, what's the word I'm looking for, some domino effect there, and it may lead all the way down to Kyle Busch.
Well,
so
you know what? We can hold on to that thought, because by the next time we have another episode, we may know where Kyle Busch is going.
We may know.
And we got something to talk about either way.
I think in theory, he is a presumptive free agent. I really do. But something's got to be nailed down in the next couple of weeks because we're getting to that point. So, anyways, Billy, what you got?
Well, my final thoughts, kind of as Julian touched on, I am super humbled and blessed to have an opportunity like this. When I reached out to everybody last year about the Appalachian Podcast, I had a lot of faith in it. I had a lot of gumption and a lot of myself believed that we could eventually get to the point where we reached a lot of people. I never in a million years would have imagined that in the year and a half we've done this, we would have had somebody like Bobby Labonte on, or a Bowman Gray legend like Burt Myers, or a modified and local legend like Satch Worley, or Jimmy Hensley. Like some of these people we've had on here, and then even down to some of the guys who are working their way up through the ranks, like Jack Wood or Jesse Little, Caden Honeycutt. I've had so much fun doing these shows that I think that being able to come on here and talk specifically about racing and the resurgence it's had in my life and how much I enjoy it again. And I got to give a lot of that to Chris Williams. Yeah. I got to give him a shit ton of it. Mad respect to him. You know, Chris has given us a lot of his time. And actually that goes back to Dean for just reaching out to Chris. You know, Dean hit us up before. He said, yeah, he used – and what got me excited about Chris is he used to be the souvenir guy. You know, he used to coordinate all that for the souvenir trailers, which for me, being a truck driver, I thought was interesting enough in itself. And Dean was all he said, oh yeah, and he's also the modified tour director for the Smart Mods. And I was like, well, that's kind of big too. And we got him in here, and he has helped us with the access. He has put us in touch with, Burt Myers and Bobby Labonte and Hermie Sadler and Bill Stanley. And he's just been a huge part of all this. And I think, through the confidence I've got through the things that he's helped us with, I think that Deez Lug Nutz is going to be a phenomenal podcast. It's not going to be this long-winded as today is because this is, once again, a Swapcast. We just kind of want to do an introduction. But in the future, also look for the Appalachian Podcast and the Deez Lug Nutz podcast, which will feature us and hopefully each and every week about a 20-minute, 15 to 20-minute segment with a guest. It could be a driver, could be a crewman, could be a media personality. We've talked to all of them, and we're going to make it one hell of a time. So I sincerely appreciate everything that everybody has done for us up to this point in time, and I look forward to a lot of the things we have coming up in the future. And for some of the Appalachian Podcast episodes, I'm not even going to mention these names right now because I don't want to jinx it. We've had 2 confirms and 1 possibility, but these are 3 massively big names. And if we strike out with one of them, that's fine. But the other 2, hey, not to mention a lot of the other shows we've got coming for the Appalachian Podcast. We've got a lot in the future. So check us out at the Appalachian Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, as well as Deez Lug Nutz on Facebook and Instagram. And Dean, I think, started a TikTok for the Appalachian Podcast. I don't know.
I check it occasionally. We got It's doing okay. How about that?
I need to. I haven't even downloaded the app yet, so I need to really download that and get a part of that so I can.
Will we get to see Billy and Jeff continue to sing on TikTok?
Yes.
I don't know. I should have taped that.
If y'all will tune in,
we really should have.
We will get some shots of liquor in us, and we will duet that shit for $500.
So, thank you, everybody. Also, go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/getontap. It's $3 a month. We're going to probably, for the foreseeable future, release, a lot of our Deez Lug Nutz stuff on there. Maybe from time to time we'll be able to just Sunday jump on a Zoom. There's a big race or a big race weekend and do a quick 10, 15-minute segment just to put it out there. But, it's supporting us. It's helping us. This isn't free. This is, gas is expensive for Dean and Julian to drive down here. Bodine's in his damn Tesla, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, I'm just right there.
And he's right across town, too. So, but Dean and Julian, hey, look, every little bit helps. So if you go on Patreon, $3 a month, you can give more if you'd like to, or any other way you can support us. We appreciate it. Give us a review. And anything else?
That's it. I'm out.
Julian, Dean?
I'm good.
Check out the blog.
Yep. Plug that real quick. How do you find it?
So you're going to find that, theracingrenaissance.blogspot.com. 2 or 3 blogs a week, just depending on when I can get on there to do it. But cover a little bit of everything. Power rankings come out on Tuesday.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So catch us. And, hey, for a lot of the other racing podcasts out there you can check out, if you kind of want to be intertwined with it, check out the Dale Jr. podcast. You have the Rick Houston's Scene Vault podcast, as well as the Short Track Report guys,
yes,
Joshua,
the Weathermans, yes.
Joshua and Bill Weatherman.
And we got to get down there to them.
Yes, we're going to try and get down there in a couple of weeks to do one with him now that you boys are home. Check those guys out. They're fantastic racing. They're a lot I see in them is a lot I see with these gentlemen in this room right now. So thank y'all so very much once again. And until next time,
I'm out. Peace
See
out.
ya.